NFL over on Sports Extra, while here on 5 Live, it's the Mexican Grand Prix. Over to you, Rosanna.
Thank you very much, Robbie. Yes, welcome to your coverage for the Mexico City Grand Prix. We are meters above sea level, 2,200 meters. The altitude is high. The stakes are high as well. It's a nice 25 degrees ambient temperature, and we're getting ready for the start of the race. The drivers are on the grid in position, ready for the national anthems. It's Rosanna Tennant with you, alongside former Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer, European sports car champion Alex Brundle, and the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson. And we've got a Ferrari front row lockout. Charles Leclerc taking pole position in a pretty hectic, chaotic qualifying session yesterday. Jolyon, it was a surprise to us. It was a surprise to Charles Leclerc and Ferrari that he got pole. Would it be a surprise to you today if he managed to take the victory in Mexico?
I still think Max Verstappen is the man to beat. He starts in third place. He has won all but 3 Grand Prix this year. But at least we've got a fight on our hands. Ferraris they surprised themselves, and it's a 1-2. Leclerc ahead of Sainz, and it leaves us poised for a thriller. But still, Verstappen in 2023 he could start last and he'd be the favourite for the Grand Prix still.
Well, he's going to have his work cut out. It isn't as easy to overtake around this track as you might think when you take a quick glance at the layout. But as you say, Jolyon, he starts from P3 this afternoon. Off the back of qualifying, there were still a few question marks, weren't they, Alex Brundle? Do we have some answers? We know now where people will be starting this afternoon's Grand Prix.
Well, speaking of starting last, Yuki Tsunoda has taken one more engine than he is allowed to for this year. That demotes him to the rear of the field. Logan Sargent took a 10-place grid penalty for overtaking under a yellow flag in qualifying, which demotes him basically to the rear of the field as well. And Lance Stroll will be from the pit lane after making unapproved setup changes to his Aston Martin. So those the 3 drivers who suffered penalties after qualifying.
And no penalties, crucially, for Max Verstappen or George Russell, who were slowing and almost coming to a stop at the end of the pit lane.
A discussion about whether that affected other drivers as they exited the pit lane. The FIA eventually have chosen no further action as a result of those penalties. The drivers blaming this maximum time they can take to head round to start their flying lap for the necessity to stop. So play on, basically, is what the FIA have said about that one.
So a few drivers starting out of position for your Mexico City Grand Prix. The BBC's chief F1 writer will be keeping a close eye on things this evening. Andrew Benson, the word of the day in the Checkered Flag podcast yesterday after the qualifying session was mercurial. That is what I took away from it. Some drivers falling foul of the session. Lando Norris in the McLaren not able to set a representative time. It's so difficult to read this field, isn't it, at the moment? So who do you think may come out on top this afternoon?
Well, as Jolyon was saying, you can't look past Verstappen. Ferrari will be desperate to keep him behind both cars going into the first 3 corners. If they can do that, then they've got a chance, and it's just a chance, to try and control him, because following around Mexico City is very tough because of the thin air. You get overheating brakes, overheating engine. But if Verstappen gets between the Ferraris, I think it's probably game over.
Yeah, he needs to have a phenomenal start, the 3-time world champion Max Verstappen, up against the 2 Ferraris, as we say. Charles Leclerc starting on pole position. We're getting ever closer to lights out here in Mexico City. But first, let's check in with your BBC News with Dan Maudsley.
F1 on 5 Live.
Welcome back to your coverage for the Mexico City Grand Prix, and we are gearing up for the start of the race. Not long now until the lights go out, with Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari on pole position alongside his teammate Carlos Sainz. Can they keep Max Verstappen behind? He qualified P3 yesterday in a pretty exciting qualifying session, so let's take a little look back at how it all unfolded.
Who can finish behind Max Verstappen? Can anyone topple the Dutchman today? As we go green light for Q1.
Max Verstappen has been noted for pit lane impeding, so plenty going on out there.
There's a yellow flag in sector 1, and it may be Fernando Alonso who's come to a stop on the exit of turn 3. Lando Norris is 19th and is coming through a yellow flag zone, and I don't think Norris is going to be able to improve here. No, he's not. He's backed off, and Norris is going to be out in Q1
and out of Q2. Carlos Sainz on the absolute brink after that error early on in qualifying will just just escaped demotion.
We're into Q3, 10.5 minutes left on the clock, and we are winding it up for the first attempt.
Up to second for Ricciardo in the AlphaTauri.
Does he need a slipstream? Does he ever? He's only 1/10 down on Max Verstappen's time. Ricciardo's up into second. Can anyone demote him off the provisional front row? What about the Ferraris? Carlos Sainz comes through, goes quicker than Verstappen. Monster lap from Sainz, and Leclerc's going even quicker. Leclerc comes out of the final corner. The Monegasque driver drives to the line himself, and he's quicker than Sainz. Leclerc on provisional pole, and it's not enough for Max Verstappen. It's going to be Charles Leclerc on pole position in Mexico. The Ferrari garage cheer.
And you won. Good job. Good job, guys. Oh, well, that's a surprise.
Nice little session there in Mexico City to set us up for this evening's Grand Prix with Charles Leclerc taking pole position. He said it was a surprise on the radio there, Jolien. And it seems that this weird combination we have in Mexico City, a high downforce package with a low downforce car, has actually suited the Ferraris. Jock Clear, one of their key engineers, talking about how that low downforce car has prevailed. But they've got good mechanical grip. So what does that mean for the race? What does it mean that they're going to be able to do better than perhaps Max Verstappen this afternoon?
Well, they've got track position, and that was the beauty of having not only Leclerc on pole, but Sainz up there as well yesterday. They've got two cars ahead of the champion, Verstappen. The big problem that Ferrari have had this year is tyre life, and we're expecting this to be a one-stop race. The degradation's not massive, but if Ferrari are going to win this one, they've got to keep the cars there at the start, hold Verstappen back, and they've got to keep their tyres alive. That's their biggest danger.
And when it comes to tyres, Alex, what are they looking at? Is it medium? Everybody has to start on that, do you think, today? Or could you be a bit dicey and a bit racy and go on a soft?
We're looking at a one-stop strategy for the race here. It's a 22-second loss when you drive through the pit lane. Add to that the difficulty of passing here in Mexico City and the lack of abrasion, that sandpaper effect of the surface affecting on the tyre, and they should be able to run relatively long. The normal strategy would be a medium tyre, jumping over to a hard tyre in the mid-race, but obviously anything is possible with drivers trying to undercut and make positions.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see when they all pull the trigger to come in and change the tyres, if it is indeed a one-stop strategy. Ferrari need to hold on to that lead. It almost seems an obvious statement, but Charles Leclerc or Carlos Sainz, they need that lead because they're not very good on their tyres. So if they can get that clean air, that's going to really help them, isn't it?
We've seen teammates use the DRS effect, the drag reduction system on the rear of the cars, to great ability in defending their track position throughout this year, holding off their rivals by giving their teammate or other drivers that effect. Maybe that's something that Ferrari can do this evening.
And a little further back, and I say little, I really mean little, P4 for Daniel Ricciardo in the AlphaTauri. Of course, he had one race weekend back last weekend in the USA. Suddenly, here he is, guns blazing, P4 in an AlphaTauri, and he's out-qualified Sergio Perez. And of course, Daniel Ricciardo wants Sergio Perez's seat in 2024 for sure, Jolien.
Well, that's why he's back. Daniel Ricciardo left Formula One at the end of last year. He didn't have a good couple of years with McLaren, and Oscar Piastri, the rookie, has replaced him. Another Australian in for an Australian. Piastri's been great. Ricciardo was watching on the sidelines for the first half of the season, but Red Bull were a little bit concerned by Sergio Perez's performance alongside Max Verstappen, and they brought Ricciardo back as a little bit of a stick. Not there, the carrot approach didn't work for Perez, so they're trying the stick now. And Ricciardo, he missed a couple of races as well with a broken metacarpal in his hand. He's back he came back last weekend, he's back here, and he is back to his best. Fourth on the grid, as you say, and ahead of Perez. That will absolutely be an interesting fight off the line.
You mentioned Oscar Piastri. He will start this evening's race from P7. He had to pull back into the garage on his install laps because a bit of paper had got stuck under the car. We've seen a bit of debris this weekend, haven't we, with the drivers trying to avoid that at all costs. The team tell me he's absolutely fine. The piece of paper has been removed, and he will start in between the two Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Anyone else that we should have our eyes on this very, very long run down to turn one? Because the start could get pretty frenetic, couldn't it, Alex?
It's really going to get frenetic. The Mercedes cars, both always there, and they're very good on their tyres. They kind of have the opposite profile to Ferrari, if you like. Slightly slower over one lap and then better over the long run. Lewis Hamilton starts his Mercedes in 6th position with George Russell down in 8th. They're going to be attacking very hard either side of the Australian rookie down towards turn one.
Well, I'm just looking up into the crowds and I can see all of the Mexican fans cheering on Sergio Perez, and we've spoken about the pressure he is under to keep that seat for 2024. Some people say he doesn't really have any competition because they think Daniel Ricciardo will stay in the AlphaTauri seat, as we all know he should be in 2024. But could Red Bull spring a surprise and do a bit of a switch? A lot of pressure on the Mexican driver to try and take the first win as a Mexican here in Mexico City. He's got a few cars in front of him to make that happen, including his teammate. But the cars are already on the grid, the mechanics standing there taking the tyre blankets off, and so Jolyon Palmer, it is almost time for lights out for the Mexico City Grand Prix. And hand it over to you in the commentary box.
Here we go then. The grid is cleared, the tyre blankets are off, leaving two glistening red Ferraris on the front row. Charles Leclerc ahead of Carlos Sainz. The tension builds, the countdown is on, and on a gorgeous Sunday afternoon in Mexico, we are counting down to the Mexican Grand Prix. So Charles Leclerc leads the cars away. It's a Ferrari 1-2. Leclerc ahead of Carlos Sainz. Then it's Max Verstappen in the Red Bull in third. Daniel Ricciardo was superb in qualifying yesterday. He starts fourth ahead of Sergio Perez. Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes is sixth. Oscar Piastri seventh. And then it's George Russell, Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, making it two Alfa Romeos in the top 10. Behind them, Pierre Gasly, Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin 13th ahead of Alex Albon in the Williams. Then it's Ocon, Magnussen, Lando Norris down in 17th place ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, who had penalties, as did Logan Sargent, and Lance Stroll today will start from the pit lane. So then, the cars making their way on the formation lap down towards the second sector already. Charles Leclerc leading the way through. Three very different sectors here, Alex Brundle, and three DRS zones of which to attack as well.
One of the highest speeds of the year, down towards turn 1, that's the first DRS zone, then down towards turn 4 is your second one. Then that tight and twisty middle sector, building up towards higher speed before entering the stadium for the final phase of the lap. We can see both Ferraris on the medium tyre. I can only see one car on the soft, and which one is that, Rosanna Tennant?
Yeah, it's a bold call from Lando Norris in the McLaren. Starting P17, he has taken on that softer tyre. How is that going to play out off the start? He's definitely going to be one to watch. It's going to be grippier off the line, but how long can he hold on to it? Just further ahead, he's got Alexander Albon in the Williams and Esteban Ocon choosing to do the sort of alternative strategy, starting on the hard tyres. Those are the only two drivers on the white-walled rubber.
That is the voice of Rosanna Tennant. Alongside me in the commentary box, it's Alex Brundle, sports car champion, and Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer. I'm Jolyon Palmer, and we are getting ready for the Mexican Grand Prix. Alex, really long run down to the first corner as well here.
It really is. Over 800 metres down towards turn 1, and the heat haze is escaping the surface here. Track temperature up at 47.9 degrees. Teams will be considering the thermal degradation, the overheating of the tyres so closely throughout this race distance, but it should help them get these medium tyres up to temperature as both Ferraris have found their grid slots at the front. It is the Alpine rolling onto the grid of Pierre Gasly, and a long wait then for the rest of the field to find their grid slots here.
Quite a quick formation lap for Charles Leclerc. Lance Stroll is now released to go and trundle down to the end of the pit lane in the Aston Martin. It's been another tricky weekend for the Aston Martin team. Fernando Alonso spun in qualifying yesterday. He's 13th, the driver that's fourth in the championship. Lando Norris is one to watch out for from 17th as well. And as Logan Sargent now finally starts to line up on the grid, it has been an awfully long hold at the front of the field for Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, your front two. Max Verstappen is third. He'll be keen to make a move at the start. The green flag waves, the lights illuminate, and the Mexico City Grand Prix gets underway now, and it's not a great reaction from Charles Leclerc, but he gets an okay drive in the second phase. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull is going to split the two Ferraris. They're three wide down to the first corner. Sainz disappears, and it's Verstappen down the inside. Sergio Perez now attacking the outside line, and they're still three wide. It's Verstappen, Leclerc and Perez, and there's contact between Leclerc and Perez. The crowd can't believe it. The home hero is off at the first corner. Leclerc cut the corner as well. He's rejoined ahead of Verstappen, but he's got big damage, and Max Verstappen comes through to take the lead of the Mexican Grand Prix. Leclerc in second, but he's going to fall all the way down the field. Carlos Sainz then in third, as Lewis Hamilton now does battle with Daniel Ricciardo, still there in the AlphaTauri through turns 4 and 5. Ricciardo hanging on ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and he'll take the place into turn 6. But drama at the start, Alex.
There absolutely was. Massive damage to the left-hand side of the front wing of Charles Leclerc. Made contact down towards turn 1. Sergio Perez, 3 into 1, didn't go. Verstappen on the inside, Perez on the outside, and Leclerc sandwiched in the middle as they make their way through the middle sector. It is that age-old, it is that well-worn phrase, Verstappen leads the Grand Prix.
Leclerc still running in second place, side-by-side action coming into the stadium. Oscar Piastri defending from George Russell in the Mercedes. They're still side-by-side as they come through the tight, twisty left-hander. Low speed through the Forest-Old baseball stadium. 65,000 Mexican fans watching on. But Sergio Perez, he's got going again. He is plumb last, 20th for Sergio Perez as they cross the line. It's Max Verstappen out front. Charles Leclerc with damages in second place, but he's holding on there with a front wing dangling off the left-hand side of his Ferrari. Carlos Sainz is third, fourth is Ricciardo, fifth is Lewis Hamilton, sixth is Piastri, still under pressure from George Russell. Then it's Hulkenberg, great start from him. Gasly 9th, Zhou 10th, Albon, Bottas, Magnussen, Alonso, Tsunoda the top 15. Norris still down there in 16th, no progress from him on the soft tyres. Sargent, Ocon and Stroll, your runners. This is the sound of Perez in the pits.
And it's the hard tyre for Perez and a front wing change as well, but they have put the car down on the floor and they appear to be retiring the car. It was the worst start for Sergio Perez that could possibly be imagined here at his home race in Mexico.
Yeah, Sergio Perez banging his hands on the steering wheel as the mechanics walked away from the car. Nothing to be done there. They checked the suspension. Of course, he flew up in the air at that turn 1 incident. And here we go. We're going to look at some replays in the commentary box of the start, Julian.
Looking back at the race start then, it was Sainz who didn't quite get away how he wanted to, and Max Verstappen went charging through the middle of both Ferraris. Perez, in the second phase of the start, took his Red Bull to the outside line, giving Charles Leclerc both Red Bulls to look at, one on the inside, one on the outside. Max Verstappen brakes late, takes what is the optimum line down into turn 1, and there just plain isn't space. We're listening in to Sergio Perez, who's going to suffer that contact on the outside line.
This is the sound then of the Mexican, and he got a beautiful slipstream from 3 cars and then 2 cars as Sainz didn't manage to keep his front wing alongside Verstappen. Verstappen then had the inside, Leclerc was in the middle, and that is the sound of contact between the Ferrari driver, the pole sitter and the home hero. That is, to me, carbon copy of the Qatar start. Verstappen on the inside, 2 rivals just behind. In Qatar, it was Russell and Hamilton was immediately out. It's very similar. Perez has the overlap, but he just pitches in a bit.
And I do think what I thought then, which is that Perez has the space to head slightly wider, and he also is able to concede that inside line if he wants to, decides not to. Could have skipped over the grass in the 3-part chicane that is turns 1, 2 and 3. Chose not to do that either, and I'm afraid he doesn't really have anyone else to look at there for the contact.
Yeah, he just turned in. I mean, what a start he had from 5th on the grid to be looking to try and take the lead. He's got a big whack and a huge hole in the side pod, and that'll be what has caused the first retirement of the race. He's wheeled back into the garage, and well, 110,000 fans in today, and they have not got anywhere near the outcome they were hoping for. A Perez podium would have been magic, a win would have been a bonus, but a retirement on the first lap is a disaster for him.
Some front wing damage, but we stay out. We don't see anything big.
Yeah, it's okay.
So that is the team radio to second place man Charles Leclerc. Still George Russell fighting with Oscar Piastri down to turn 1. That's for 6th position. So a recap. The top 10 is Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz. Ricciardo still there in 4th place, trailing Carlos Sainz by just over half a second. Then it's Hamilton 5th, Piastri 6th, fighting with Russell just behind him. Hulkenberg is still 8th, Gasly 9th, and Zhou rounding out your top 10. Outside it's Albon, Bottas, Magnussen, Tsunoda. Norris now up to 15th. Then it's Alonso, Sargent, Stroll and Ocon. And Alex, concerns now for Charles Leclerc. Still in second place, but that front wing is looking perilous.
It looked really nasty for Leclerc, but that element, that outside element of the front wing that was flapping around has just flown off. That is the element which is more related to managing the wheel weight for regulatory purposes than it is to actually generating downforce. And we have seen cars continue through the Grand Prix. As long as that main plane is sturdy, they're choosing to continue at the moment at Ferrari.
Lap 4 of 71. This is the sound on board Lewis Hamilton. Into 5th place then. Started 6th. He's benefited from Perez having the retirement, but Sergio Perez is actually still sitting in the car. We're on to lap 4 and he's waiting, but I think the shake of the heads there from the crew mean that he can jump out.
When he landed in the runoff area, he looked to have a significant bounce over the right rear suspension as well, with the wheel taking a very odd movement. We have a virtual safety car deployed, JP.
And that is for Charles Leclerc's broken shard of carbon fibre that is sitting there on the racing line down towards turn 1. So as Verstappen starts lap 5, he has to reduce his speed, and they all now have to run to a reduced lap time whilst a Marshall can go out and pick up a chunky, meaty bit of Ferrari front wing that is sitting down there.
Looks more than that though, doesn't it? Looks like a piece of barge board or similar. It's quite a hunk of carbon fibre, as you say. And let's have a look then. You're listening in to Lando Norris, who started the race, the only driver to start the race on a set of soft tyres, making his way through past an Aston Martin. That's the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso at the rear of the field, and he's making good progress, as is Oscar Piastri, who ceased his battle with George Russell by making it round the outside of turn 12 and concluding the move up the inside of turn 13.
It was actually a great move from Piastri, wasn't it? Started ahead of Russell. They were 7th and 8th on the grid. Russell must have got ahead on the first half of the lap, and then Piastri came around the outside of turn 12. That's not an easy one to do. We're still under virtual safety car then. Lap 5 of 71. We're waiting for a big bit of carbon fibre to be picked up. That has now been done, and the virtual safety car is ending with Lewis Hamilton prowling on the back of Daniel Ricciardo in the AlphaTauri. Ricciardo started 4th. He's still running 4th behind the top 3 on the grid. Sainz lost out at the start, but again picked up with Sergio Perez having the moment with Charles Leclerc. Leclerc has damage in 2nd place, and we are back under green flag conditions. Lewis Hamilton squeezes on the throttle now coming out of turn 16, and he can accelerate down the long 1 kilometre straight then to find a braking point. And just ahead of him, within a second, as he opens the DRS, he's got Daniel Ricciardo's AlphaTauri.
Caught napping though slightly there, Hamilton, by the concertina effect. He was right on the gearbox of Daniel Ricciardo, but now has fallen back slightly. What an important moment for Ricciardo. It being Sergio Perez's home race notwithstanding, he's got a massive opportunity to put some points on the board for AlphaTauri, but Lewis Hamilton is hunting him down with DRS availability.
Mercedes are expected to be much more competitive on race trim than they were yesterday. Hamilton qualified 6th, George Russell was 8th. They're still running 5th and 7th, but Hamilton's looking menacing in the mirrors of the AlphaTauri ahead. So it's Verstappen with 2 seconds to Charles Leclerc, then a 1.5 seconds further back is Carlos Sainz. Sainz unable to put pressure on his teammate with a bit of that front wing damage. Sainz not able to put a huge amount of pressure on at the moment. Perez is now out of the car and can now start to think about a home race gone wrong. Also, Alex, let's not forget, there's a battle for 2nd in the championship still up for grabs. Hamilton had shut that gap down to 19 points after last Sunday's US Grand Prix. Went up to 39 as Hamilton was thrown out. Perez had a second chance, and suddenly it's gone towards Hamilton again. The Brit running in 5th place, the 7-time world champ. This is the sound of his Mercedes into the penultimate corner once again. He's got a huge chance to whittle that points gap down.
Yeah, looking at 4th place as well, isn't he, Lewis Hamilton? Fastest lap of the race at this stage for good measure for him, and all the opportunity to reduce that points deficit. Daniel Ricciardo looks in the mirror, shakes to the inside to defend a little bit of fresh air. He knows Lewis Hamilton is coming for him in that Mercedes.
Ricciardo is under pressure here. They exit turn 3. There's a long straight up towards turn 4, and there will be DRS once again. Ricciardo hasn't got any DRS. He's over a second behind Sainz, and now he defends the middle of the road. Hamilton looks towards the outside, but there's no way through at turn 4. It's a tight left-hander, immediately into a right-hander. The turn 4-5 chicane, short stretch up towards a double apex turn 6 towards the right, and then we're into the twisty, faster middle sector, and there's no way through for Hamilton here, but he was very, very close. Thought about a move that time.
The issue that he's got is here in Mexico City. We've been talking about it all weekend. The reduction in the air pressure, 2,200 meters of altitude. It reduces that DRS effect because there's less drag, so there's less drag to reduce critically. You lose out all the way through the middle sector, following the driver ahead with the aero wash affecting the wings of your car, so you don't have quite the run. I think, though, Hamilton is just going to have the pure speed to make his way past Ricciardo this time around.
He clambers over the curbs at turns 14 and 15. right, then a left, then a double right to end the lap, and Hamilton again will get the DRS. They accelerate up towards 200 miles per hour and beyond down to the first corner. Hamilton tucked in the slipstream of Ricciardo. Does Ricciardo have to defend? Yes, he does, the middle of the road, but Hamilton will go down the inside. No, he doesn't. Backs out of it at the last minute. He's not quite close enough. In they go to turn 1, the right, the left of turn 2, the right again of turn 3. Hamilton takes huge apex as he tries to get the run up to 4. DRS is available once again, but I don't know if he's going to be close enough. He's getting closer again, but he's not there into turn 4. He will have to wait another lap.
Ricciardo doing a masterful job of managing those first 3 apexes. They're clambering all over the curves, much in a way that Alex Albon lost a lap during qualifying. But Ricciardo just jumping away, it must be said, from Lewis Hamilton through that early stage of the lap. Much talk from the teams about how if you follow a driver closely, you overheat the surface of the tyre as well here in Mexico. He's going to have to be very clever about the way he goes about this.
And Ricciardo's got a slight reprieve this lap. We're on lap 8 of 71. They're coming thick and fast at the Mexican Grand Prix. It's a short lap, 4.3 kilometers, so there are plenty of them in this one. Lando Norris still working hard behind Yuki Tsunoda. The Brit down in 15th position. 6 podiums for the last 9 races for Norris, but he didn't get a single flying lap in qualifying yesterday, Rosanna.
No, a really difficult day for Lando Norris, trying to make amends for that this afternoon on that soft tyre, making his way through the order. I've just been having a listen into the Ferrari radio, Charles Leclerc's race engineer, telling him that now that bit of front wing has fallen off the Ferrari, he is missing about 5 to 10 points of downforce. So as racing drivers, you guys will know what that feels like. What's that going to translate to in terms of lap time? He's just gone to 2.1 seconds behind Max Verstappen. It was under 2 seconds, so it's obviously starting to fall away from him.
It's hard to estimate, and it depends a lot on the layout and the specifics. Around here, it shouldn't be too bad. So many of the corners are slower in nature, but it's definitely going to be losing him significant time as Yuki Tsunoda tries to make a move around the outside of Kevin Magnussen. That's what you're listening into, but he's going to lock up the inside front and go straight across the runoff area in turn 2.
Audacious to say the least from Tsunoda. Completely missed the braking point, and he knows when you're racing Kevin Magnussen, go hard or go home. And he went home on that occasion over the grass, and Magnussen came back through. Tsunoda had to start this one from the back of the grid after AlphaTauri replaced power unit components on his car. Daniel Ricciardo, his teammate, still running up in 4th place. Tsunoda's up into 14th, so he's actually made a great start from the back of the grid, fighting with Magnussen for 13th. Here's Lewis Hamilton.
Car's running hot. Yeah, copy. Just stay on top of your dash.
Pete Bonington, Lewis Hamilton's race engineer, saying stay on top of your dash. Hamilton 9 tenths now back from Daniel Ricciardo, and he's pulling out, but not to try and make a move this time on the main straight.
No, he's pulling out to try to get some air through that power unit, through that car. Reduced cooling effect here in Mexico City for the reasons previously discussed, and he's struggling to stay with Daniel Ricciardo as a result. That is going to be a big issue for Lewis Hamilton if he's running in traffic through the rest of this Grand Prix, if he's going to be overheating engines, tyres, brakes by doing so.
It's a unique race, this one. The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City is at high altitude with 2,000 meters high, and the air is thin, the downforce is low, and that means also you're not getting air over the car. The reason the downforce is low, also difficult for cooling. So Hamilton already running into issues there in 5th place. Now Mercedes, surely they would have known they'd be in traffic. Let's hear from Norris.
We must pull out to the right.
Yeah, I am. I'm doing it everywhere. No one else is doing it. Just me.
Norris not sounding too pleased to be hearing that, but that's the same issue then at McLaren.
Yeah, it was 25 degrees in the air, so it's warm, but it's not overbearingly hot. The team's clearly struggling, remembering it's the same power unit in the back of that McLaren as it is in the rear of the Mercedes, so they're clearly struggling with the temperature of that unit. Lando Norris not wanting to do that, of course, because he wants to take the slipstream from the car ahead down towards turn 1. Doesn't want to give up that performance to cool the car.
Hamilton's right with Daniel Ricciardo then. Ricciardo, the Aussie, goes to the inside. Hamilton goes even further to the inside, and this time on lap 11, Lewis Hamilton's going to take the place. Finally, the pressure tells as Piastri and Russell still do battle further back, but the McLaren stays ahead of the second Mercedes. But Lewis Hamilton finally makes it past Daniel Ricciardo. So Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, and now it's Hamilton and Ricciardo, your top 5. And Ricciardo hasn't looked back on the second DRS zone towards turn 4, but Hamilton finally through.
Intelligent work from Hamilton. He's dropped back, moved out, cooled the car, and now he's made the move on Daniel Ricciardo very intelligently down towards turn 1 and picked up the place.
Now I wonder if Ferrari will have to wake up. Verstappen leads by 2.8 seconds. He's under no pressure. Charles Leclerc, the pole sitter, is in second place, but with that front wing damage that will be costing him at least a couple of tenths per lap, and that's the sort of thing that can sometimes get worse through a stint as well. As you start sliding the tyres, it's a compound issue for Leclerc, but he's still ahead of his teammate Carlos Sainz. 2.5 seconds separates the two Ferraris, just 2.2 seconds, and coming down is the gap Sainz to Hamilton, third and fourth. And Alex, we said yesterday, Hamilton from 6th, can he be targeting a podium? He's already up to 4th, and he's got a great shot here.
Hamilton 2 tenths quicker than Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari last time around, so looking like he may have the pace. A tenth slower than both Ferraris as they cross the stripe this time. He's managing the pace to them. Let's see if he's got anything extra in the tank. Now he's in clear air and giving his engine a little bit of an easier time.
Yeah, he won't have to cool the car so much. George Russell will, and he has a look to the inside of Oscar Piastri once again, but it's half-hearted from Russell this time on lap 12. Piastri sweeps in to take the apex of the right-hander of turn 1, bounces over the curb, the left-hander of 2, and accelerates up towards turn 3. The Mercedes duo are flying. Hamilton is making places. Russell looks like it's a matter of time now before he can come past Oscar Piastri. Still 6th and 7th, and there's a big gap behind Russell to Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas, still running a brilliant 6th for them. So the complete order on lap 12 is Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Piastri 6th ahead of Russell, Hülkenberg, Gasly's 9th, and Zhou 10th. Behind is Albon, Bottas, Magnussen, Sargent, Norris, Stroll, Alonso, Ocon, and Tsunoda, your 19 runners. There's been a bit of a move between the two Aston Martins down towards turn 4. Stroll has cleared Fernando Alonso on that last lap. Rosanna, it's all happening.
Yeah, we've had a couple of cars into the pits. Yuki Tsunoda has come in and switched to the hard tyre, so he is now running dead last. He's a long way off his teammate Daniel Ricciardo if he's going to help him this afternoon, but perhaps they can do something when Daniel's making his way through the traffic. And then a little further up, Lando Norris in the McLaren has come in as well. He was consulted when we had that virtual safety car by his race engineer. If he had to switch at that point under a safety car, would he want the hard or the medium? Lando deliberated, finally said, I'd want the hard, and that is now what they've put him on. But of course, during green flag conditions, he's now back out on track, Julian.
Lap 13 becomes lap 14 in a few moments' time, and it's lap 27 to 34, which is Pirelli's predicted window for the medium, which is the tyre that most of the field are on, to switch over to the hard on the one-stopper strategy. So that's when we're expecting stops.
Watch the curb at turn 3, Max. It's not helping you, I don't think.
Yeah, but I'm trying to hit it correctly, but our cars, it's not very lovely there.
They do degrees of loveliness, don't they? Max Verstappen and Gianpiero Lambiase on the radio, and that was GP there saying, watch the curb at turn 3. It's quite bumpy there. That caused Fernando Alonso spin in qualifying yesterday. And is that more reliability concern for the race leader then?
I think it might make his floor quite unlovely if he continues to take that curb, and that's what JP's trying to let Verstappen know. He's still got the pace. He's still managing the car. I don't think he's under too much pressure at this stage.
So Verstappen leads and is under instruction to avoid the curb at turn 3. He's not marching away from Charles Leclerc, but it's a 10th here, it's a 10th there, and the gap now as they approach lap 14 of 71 extends to 3.6 seconds. Verstappen leads Leclerc, still 2 Ferraris in the top 3, but Hamilton is sneaking up on them. Lewis Hamilton that last lap a couple of tenths quicker than Carlos Sainz. And we're heading towards now the territory for one-stoppers. There's a really early stop from Norris and Tsunoda, so surely that's a straight-up plumb 2 stop for those guys.
Yeah, we are moving towards the one-stopper territory, and I can tell you that the Ferrari pace is really falling away now from the pace of Max Verstappen. It became 4 tenths suddenly, where it was sort of 1-2 tenths at a time that Max Verstappen was pulling away. That Ferrari degradation issue is playing in. Carlos Sainz, however, being told he is on plan A, just being reminded it is on plan A, which we can only assume is a one-stopper at this stage.
Yeah, so having to manage a little bit to make sure that these medium tyres don't fall away too soon, and that puts them in territory of a 2-stopper, costs you 20 more seconds to come into the pits and make a change, and they won't get it back in terms of tyre freshness. So at the moment on lap 14, everyone's still plumping for a 1-stop in the top 10. Just Norris and Tsunoda from further down have pitted. This is the sound of Alex Albon running in 11th place on a set of hard tyres, so he's going to do the opposite in this one. And we've got a really big gaggle of cars formed up behind Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg in the Haas, still running in 8th. He's got Pierre Gasly in the Alpine tucked in right behind him in 9th. Then it's Zhou, then it's Albon in 11th. Then it's Bottas in 12th, Magnussen in 13th. And this is actually quite an important scrap for these guys as well. Haas are struggling at the moment, struggling to score any points. They've slipped down to 9th in the Constructors' Championship. But if Hülkenberg can hang on, this would be a very, very well-earned 4 points, and a huge 4 points for Haas. But Gasly's got the DRS on him as they come down towards the first turn here. Can the blue Alpine approach? Not really, but behind, the blue Williams can. And he tries to make a move on Zhou. Alex Albon down the inside, and it's good incisive racing there for Albon, who's made it through up into the top 10. That's a big move for the Williams, who starts to slide coming out of turn 3, getting the power down. He may well be under attack on the next stretch up to turn 4, but instead he's gonna ease away from Zhou, who's under more pressure from his teammate Valtteri Bottas behind. So good move from Alex Albon. We know that Williams is quick in a straight line, and he proved it. Good move down the inside, Rosanna.
But you know what? He's been trying to get that move done for quite some time, Jolyon. He was on the radio to his race engineer saying the Alphas are so quick on the straight. Of course, he's meaning the Alfa Romeo. So it's been a while to make that move. But finally, Alexander Albon getting that move done on Zhou Guanyu.
One of the few drivers out there on that hard tyre. Esteban Ocon and now Lando Norris and Yuki Tsunoda are the other 3. But Alexander Albon perhaps demonstrating there the crossover point between that hard and the medium, with the medium starting to fall away. And that'll bode well for drivers looking at stepping across to that hard. They might choose to do so earlier than they otherwise would have done.
Keeps the balance check when you can. Balance is great, mate.
Happy days for Lewis Hamilton, running in 4th place and approaching the DRS zone of Carlos Sainz. 1.1 seconds separating the Ferrari in 3rd and the Mercedes in 4th. This is the sound of Pierre Gasly, who is frustrated in 9th, downshifting down to 3rd gear, 60 miles per hour through the apex of the first corner, clambers over the curbs, gets back on the throttle now, and he'll get DRS again. But the Alpine in 9th is tucked in behind Hülkenberg's Haas in 8th position, and Hülkenberg is about a second and a half off the pace and missing the apex quite badly at turn 4 on that lap. But Gasly's not got the speed to pass him at the moment.
The rotation of the Haas is so ponderous for Nico Hülkenberg. It's just really, really slow to make its way through those medium speed corners. Alpine, with their problems of their own, they've been suffering with the power unit, getting the power out of the car all weekend long. But this is massively important circuit positioning to have for Nico Hülkenberg on sequence with the rest of the field in a points paying position at this stage of the race. He's got to try and convert this if he can.
So then, Verstappen leads, Leclerc, Sainz, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Piastri, Russell, Hülkenberg, Gasly, and now Alex Albon is your top 10. Hamilton is right with Carlos Sainz, but he doesn't have DRS this time. He moves to the inside, once again looking like he's cooling the car, and he will now start to loom larger in the mirrors of the Spaniard ahead. Andrew Benson, what are your thoughts on 17 laps into this 71 lap contest?
Well, I don't think it's shaping up to be the greatest Grand Prix of all time, Jolyon, is it? But Lewis Hamilton's providing a bit of interest. I think Ferrari are looking very, very vulnerable to him. It's interesting to me that Leclerc, although he's got a damaged front wing, is still able to be quicker than Sainz, who seems to be running into his usual tyre wear issues quicker than his teammate. It's been the pattern of the season. Leclerc's usually a bit quicker in qualifying too, but the gap seems to extend in the race system radio.
Keep that power to drive for another couple of laps. Let the deg come to us.
So Hamilton then being told to just wait, and it'll come back to him. Andrew?
But he's looking like he's going to get Sainz. And then, of course, the question is, if Ferrari change Leclerc's front wing, that might gift Hamilton another place as well. So they've got a difficult decision to make there with Leclerc, I think, Ferrari.
The voice of the BBC's chief F1 writer, Andrew Benson, then, alongside myself, Jolyon Palmer, Alex Brundle in the commentary box. We've got Rosanna Tennant with us as well, as we're on lap 18 of 71. Verstappen leading now by 4.3 seconds over Charles Leclerc. Sainz, surprisingly, is still 4 seconds back from his teammate. So I don't see why Ferrari would change the front wing of Charles.
Unless they choose to do it in the scheduled stop, they'll have an exact idea of how much time that'll cost them. And if they don't lose position by doing so. They may well choose to, but they clearly would at the moment to Sainz and maybe even Hamilton at this stage. They run it until it starts to lose pace is what I would suggest. As long as it's not delaminating at the front of the car, they'll be taking pictures of it and trying to work out if it is over the pit wall.
So after that first chunk came off it, the rest of it has stayed structurally sound. The left side of the front wing of Charles Leclerc that had contact with Sergio Perez on the first corner of the Grand Prix. Perez tried to come around the outside. They were 3 wide with Max Verstappen at the start of this one. Perez lost out on the outside and is the race's only retirement so far. Leclerc carries on then, now in second place with the damaged front wing. Max Verstappen unopposed right now at the front of the field, as we're very used to in 2023. We hoped it would be a little bit longer for Max to take the lead in this one, with Ferraris 1 and 2 on the grid, but it was all of about 200 metres before he pierced through them and took the lead.
We dreamed to all the way to the apex to turn 1, didn't we, before Max Verstappen was going to be out front. Leclerc will be investigated after the race for driving in an unsafe condition. I don't think anything will come of that.
What's the point in that?
Yeah, I agree with you, to be honest.
But, you know, we're on lap 19 of 71.
What's the point in investigating it?
Either he's driving in an unsafe condition, in which case tell him to pit and change the wing.
Tyres are giving up, mate. There's not much I can do.
Understood, thank you.
Yeah, you're convincing all of us, Max.
Well, he's still 4.2 seconds out front and extending the gap by just 0.2 seconds on the last lap. There's only been a 10th here, 10th there, little gains on each of the 19 laps so far, but Verstappen probably saying what all of the drivers in the top 9 are thinking on the medium, that they're starting to go away. The fastest driver on the circuit for the last few laps has routinely been Lando Norris on his new hard tyres down in 18th, and he is set to undercut a whole host of cars when we get to the next round of stops. But can Lando make it to the end on that set of hard tyres? It's going to be a long one for him.
I also think it's going to be a long time before we see people coming in, but Max Verstappen has just been told to box. Other drivers being told to extend, the likes of Oscar Piastri. McLaren race engineers telling him that the pack is so tightly spaced that the longer they can extend, the better. Logan Sargent in the Williams down in P14 also being told to extend, and Max Verstappen is into the pits now. So he's pitting from the lead, said his tyres were gone, up he goes on the jacks, the tyres come off, and he's onto the hard tyres. The race leader in and out very quickly with a stop time of 2.4 seconds.
Slick stuff from the Red Bull crew, as always, but I'm surprised how early they'd gone for that one. Lewis Hamilton now right on the tail of Carlos Sainz. He was told to back off and try again a couple of laps later. We are a couple of laps later, and here he is on the tail of Carlos Sainz. Leclerc now inherits the race lead. Sainz is second, a full 5 seconds behind his teammate, and he's got his mirrors full of the black Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, who looks to the outside, coming up towards turn 4, but he's not quite close enough to make a move. Hamilton is quick in this race, though, and Mercedes could yet be Verstappen's closest challenger. Verstappen came out in 7th place.
We should cover off, apologies if you already did, Palm, it was the hard tyre for Verstappen, which gives him an each-way bet now on strategy. He can stop again and put another set of mediums on, or if he's able to, he can run all the way to the end. That wasn't what Pirelli initially suggested was possible, but it may well be with fuel burning off.
Are you surprised to see Verstappen pit under no pressure, though? 4 seconds clear of Leclerc. That's an unprovoked pit stop then from Red Bull.
I thought that radio message was a total bluff from Verstappen, from the pace that he had on track and the way that it appeared.
Just be sensible in these first 3 or 4 laps.
A double bluff, perhaps, from GP. Giampiero Lambesi to Max Verstappen. Playing games with everyone. It seems like they can do what they like this year and still win the race. But Verstappen is pitted remarkably early from an unassailable position, it seemed, in the first third of this Grand Prix. But as we come on to lap 21, the Ferraris stay out and they lead 1-2. Leclerc ahead of Sainz, who's still got his mirrors full of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton looks to the inside once again, but it's just a shadow move down to the first corner. Sainz doesn't bite, doesn't need to defend at the moment and slow himself down, and they come up towards turn 4. Hamilton is looking quick though, half a second back from Sainz. The straight line speed is not huge for the Mercedes, and that we saw him take a while to pass Ricciardo. Ricciardo's still within 4 seconds of Hamilton, having a nice drive here. Hamilton just not able to make passes super quickly.
Well, it's Halloween season. I think he's just trying to look scary, isn't he, in the wing mirrors of Sainz. Lewis Hamilton trying to generate some sort of error from Sainz, and that's the problem we're going to see for Verstappen, you know, who's now 1.7 seconds, make that 1.6 in a moment, behind George Russell. DRS effect, not very good this weekend, and Verstappen's given himself a lot of passing to do with that strategy.
He's opened the door for a potential 2-stopper, Verstappen. or a really, really long one-stop to get to the end of the race. The Mercedes crew are ready. This could well be for Lewis Hamilton. Sainz comes through now, clambers over the curb at turn 14, turns it into 16. The pit lane will greet the drivers as Sainz has Hamilton still trailing him, but neither Sainz or Hamilton pit. Leclerc leads 6 seconds clear of Sainz, who still has Hamilton within 7/10, but Hamilton moves to the right-hand side on the pit straight. He's not trying to pass, he's just trying to cool the tyres and the car at this stage. Russell comes through and doesn't pit either, so another game of bluff.
I think what they're seeing here is Max Verstappen makes the move then to the inside of George Russell, and it is candy from a Mercedes-coloured baby down the inside of turn 1. Lovely stuff from Max Verstappen as he continues his stint on.
Trick or treat for Max Verstappen.
Trick or treat.
Treat for him on lap 22. Another place.
But also something to consider with Max Verstappen, he has got another set of new hards available to him. So maybe he's gone early now, opening up the chance to maybe take on another set later on in the race as we listen to Carlos Sainz.
I still think one stop is still the best. France, 0.7, yeah.
We've got a race on our hands then with Verstappen hitting when it didn't look like he needed to. He wasn't falling back in towards Charles Leclerc, but Red Bull bit the bullet. They called the race leader in. He's now up into 6th place, but he's on for a really long, tough one-stop. Oh, you're right, he's got to do a load of overtaking to win this one.
Yeah, that's plan A. And I think what the teams are doing here is looking at Lando Norris and Alex Albon, who've been going very well on that hard tyre, albeit Norris has got nowhere near the track position he needs. But Alex Albon has been marching on that hard tyre. And I think they've been looking at it and thinking, that looks pretty good. This medium may well have grained early on in proceedings with heavy fuel loads and not much grip on the circuit surface. And so let's get off it and throw the car on hards.
Verstappen has caught Oscar Piastri, and Piastri makes no attempt to defend on the way down to turn 1. Verstappen swoops past the McLaren and takes 5th position. So on the new tyres, he's marching through and he's not losing any time with this. He was 1 second quicker than Leclerc on the last lap. He is now 14 seconds behind the race leader, and he's on a charge on these new hard tyres, Rosanna.
And the next person up the road will be Daniel Ricciardo in the AlphaTauri, and just ahead of him will be Lewis Hamilton, who's been on the radio saying that the tyres are good. So actually we've got a nice move here, as you can hear, riding on board with Lando Norris as he overtakes Fernando Alonso. That hard tyre that Norris has taken on, obviously coming good round the first turn, managing to get the move done on the Aston Martin.
So if you've got the tyre differential, you can make the move. It's just where drivers are in sequence with each other. They seem to have to wait lap on lap on lap, overheating the engine and giving themselves difficulty. That was 14th place for Lando Norris. His next target will be Lance Stroll.
So the strategy is coming towards the early pitters then. Norris, who has a quick car, didn't qualify, or pretty much didn't qualify at all yesterday, didn't put a single time lap on the board, and was caught out with Alonso's late spin. There's a bit of tape dangling out from the side of Yuki Tsunoda's AlphaTauri as well. So Tsunoda, who was forced to start from the back of the grid, has that might cost him a little bit of downforce down in 16th place. This is the sound of the champion of 2023, Max Verstappen, on lap 24, now bearing down on Daniel Ricciardo, his former teammate. They started alongside each other in this Grand Prix. 3rd for Verstappen, 4th for Ricciardo. They're now 4th and 5th, but Verstappen has pitted from the race lead, and he's trying to get onto terms with his former Red Bull teammate. Ricciardo now in the AlphaTauri, having a nice drive, a quiet drive so far, but he's still got Hamilton 3.5 seconds ahead, and he's only 5 seconds away from the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. That is our battle at the moment for the final podium place. In effect, once Verstappen gets back towards the front and the pit stop shakeout, it's Leclerc out front, 7 seconds clear of Sainz. Then it's the drivers just behind that. Still Lewis Hamilton, 1 second away from Sainz, and Ricciardo 3.5 seconds back, with Verstappen in 5th, hunting him down.
You know what? Ricciardo's done a brilliant job of clinging on to Lewis Hamilton after he lost that place, hasn't he? Staying in the hunt there in the AlphaTauri. Yeah, Max Verstappen is likely to make the move in very short order, but Ricciardo has maybe kept the DRS there for a few laps, but definitely kept the pace, is clinging on to the top 3.
He's going to struggle to cling on for much longer because Verstappen is right with him. Once again, the Mercedes team are out, and this time Hamilton comes in, pulls into the right-hand side, and this is a chance for Mercedes to undercut Ferrari. Hamilton v Sainz. In comes Lewis.
And he's heading his way into the Mercedes pit box. The mechanics are ready to receive. He goes up on the jacks. The tyres are put on, and Lewis is away nice and quickly, 2.5 seconds. He was happy with those medium tyres, so let's wait and see if we can hear what he has to say about being brought in. I wonder if he was keen on that. Verstappen up into P3.
So how quickly could he fire up these hard tyres? It's Hamilton v Sainz now in a proxy battle on the track. Lap 25, and Sainz has got to try and cover off this undercut threat. Hamilton emerges in 7th place. He's got some nice clear air ahead of Pierre Gasly. He's got his teammate 12 seconds up the road. It's all about this outlap for Hamilton.
Definitely is, and it's an open strategy now for both of them. I believe they will be able to make it to the end. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda's making the move on Fernando Alonso a little further back, but that's not the battle we're super interested in. Max Verstappen has made his way past Daniel Ricciardo and up into 3rd place on his continuing march for the front as well.
Hamilton's lighting it up on the outlap. Sainz isn't doing a huge amount on his in-lap. He's slower than Charles Leclerc, who still leads this race. It's Sainz in 2nd place, Hamilton in 7th place, and will Sainz be able to cover off Lewis Hamilton? Charles Leclerc exits the final corner. He'll start another lap with a nice lead of 7.7 seconds. But what about Carlos Sainz? He stays out. Here's his radio.
Our best bet is to extend and go optimal one stop. Copy.
So they're going to continue on then at Ferrari and try to take the optimal position. They will have to use the hard tyre. They're going to give themselves a benefit of a newer hard tyre perhaps through to the end of the race. Well, we're about to find out. Are we going to see Carlos Sainz in the pit lane this time around? No, we're not. We are going to see the McLaren of Oscar Piastri.
And he's already out. A nice, well, actually a 3.3 stop time for Oscar Piastri, but he is back out, heading onto track now, and he's got those hard tyres on. He's at the pit exit now. Albon going past, as does Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. Interesting that Alex Albon on that hard tyre is making progress, so this is good learning, I guess, for those who are just taking on this hard tyre.
He's got Bottas for company now, so Albon passed one Alfa Romeo earlier on, got himself into the top 10. Now he's got the other one, the slightly quicker one this weekend, on his tail. Piastri has emerged, pitted from 5th place. He's emerged behind the Albon-Bottas battle, still in the top 10, and he's in his own battle, remember, with George Russell in this one as well. So Russell stays out, one Mercedes, Hamilton has pitted, looking for an undercut. Sainz didn't cover him off. That battle will be on hold for the moment and will be back on probably later in the race when Sainz pits, but he will emerge behind Hamilton. Russell going long, still on the medium tyres and running in 5th place.
Hamilton improving his pace naturally on those new hard tyres. We'll see what kind of pace that he can find. But I can only imagine, I don't see why Ferrari haven't covered off Hamilton at this stage, because surely they're putting them, okay, the hard tyre will be newer through to the end of the race, but it's not going to be enough to give them the ability to steal back track position as George Russell comes in.
That's the sound of the jacks on the Mercedes car, and George Russell is away with a faster time than his teammates. 2.6 stop time for George Russell, much faster than Lewis Hamilton, and he's taken those hard tyres as well. Where's he going to come out? Down in P7 at the moment in the pit exit.
So the battle for Russell is with Oscar Piastri. Albon flashes past, Bottas flashes past, and here comes Piastri. He's going to be ahead of George Russell. So Russell is going to be back behind the McLaren he's been staring at since the end of lap 1 when Piastri came around the outside of the Brit at turn 12, and that is job done for McLaren at this stage, and that is the strategy that you're just surprised that Ferrari didn't do them with Sainz.
I don't see any reason why. It's not like they're in trouble, we don't think, in terms of tyre degradation on the hard tyre from this stage onwards on a one stop. So why would you delay that stop at this point?
Well, I think by the time Hamilton pitted, it was too late to cover him off. Hamilton's outlap was probably too good for Sainz, who did an average, what would have been an in-lap. So by the time Hamilton pitted, they were a little bit snookered. The only thing left was to go long, which they're doing. Still 1st and 2nd, although Sainz has got Verstappen bearing down him. Here's Russell.
Why have we pitted right behind Albon? Surely we could have overcut him.
We're at risk from Norris behind on that hard tyre.
What do you mean a risk? He in the box?
So there we go. Lando Norris started down in 18th position, and he is maybe coming into this battle for 5th place. Ricciardo's in from 4th position. The AlphaTauri has a swift change and he'll get going again. But George Russell then, a little bit perplexed why he's come back out in traffic and why he's out behind Oscar Piastri, who he spent the whole race trying to pass.
Well, Norris also will have to stop again, surely, with the early stop onto that hard tyre, which would release Russell. But I guess they didn't want to give up track position at this stage and have a battle with Norris that would have cost Russell significant time.
Yeah, Norris can go a lot longer. Can he go to the end of the race? That would be some coaxing of these Pirelli tyres if he could, but he was the second driver to stop. Yuki Tsunoda the first from the back end. Norris didn't have a lot to lose with his lowly grid position, pitted early. Now he's up to 11th place and staring at the back of this fight. Piastri has cleared Albon. Albon now 8th. Russell 9th. Bottas 10th. Norris in 11th and still on a bit of a charge.
Sainz now long lost track position already to Lewis Hamilton by a margin. So he will come out behind Lewis Hamilton, who last lap around did a 23.7. Sainz up into the 24s, so he will have to pass if he wants to keep that spot.
And he's going to lose that spot on track to Max Verstappen, who makes the easiest of passes, sweeps around the Ferrari, sweeps back to take the racing line into turn one, and Sainz, he had absolutely nothing he could do there. Leclerc still leads the race. He's 8 seconds now ahead of Max Verstappen, who has made a pit stop and is hunting him down to the tune of just half a second a lap. Sainz third.
It's one of those days, isn't it, where Verstappen is in F0.5 and the rest of them are in Formula One. George Russell making the move past Alexander Albon, having just pitted.
That promotes Norris up into the top 10. Albon having a little look back at Russell down to the first corner, but the Williams hasn't made a pit stop, and that would be a forlorn attempt for the driver, just trying to take a point or two from this one in that big battle in the lower places of the constructor standings.
And how many more laps you can do at this pace? Question?
Well, now everything feels good, everything is under control.
Charles Leclerc, the race leader, sounds happy, is happy at the moment. 7.5 seconds clear of Max Verstappen. There's going to be a battle coming on soon with Verstappen closing in, but Leclerc is cool and calm. The pole sitter leads the race, hasn't made a pit stop yet. Norris there with a nice move around the outside of Valtteri Bottas. He's up into 9th.
Yeah, good move from Norris. That's really working out for him early on, isn't it? And he continues on his way. What Ferrari have got to desperately hope for now is some sort of virtual safety car to give them the opportunity for a cheap pit stop. That would bring them right back into this. They could throw the hard tyre on and go after Verstappen.
So in theory, Ferrari are in this fight. They've got to pit once. Verstappen surely has to pit once more.
Not on real pace.
Don't crush the dream.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
The reality, theory is they're in the fight. The reality is Verstappen is on a charge.
You were on Jeopardy watch there, weren't you?
Look, I'm trying to bring something to this Mexican Grand Prix. We're on lap 30 of 71. We hope that there's a fight left in it. The Ferrari started 1-2. Verstappen started third, but pierced through the two Ferraris to take the lead into the first corner. Charles Leclerc then had contact with Sergio Perez. Let's not forget, Leclerc is driving with a damaged front wing still, and leads this one by 6.8 seconds. But Verstappen on the last lap was 1.6 seconds quicker than the race leader. So we are going to have those two coming together quite soon on the track unless Leclerc makes his pit stop. Yuki Tsunoda is on a charge, makes a nice move on Lance Stroll just outside of the points. He was another one to stop early.
Lovely move from Yuki Tsunoda. Lance Stroll out of sorts all weekend, made a setup change before the race, which caused him to start from the pit lane. Clearly not happy with the car. Continues on in 12th position on his set of medium tyres, which he's had since the beginning of the Grand Prix.
Carlos Sainz comes in then, and the Ferrari mechanics are ready with the wheels and the tyres, and on they go with the hard tyres, and he's off with a 2.3 stop time. Carlos Sainz back out. Let's see where he feeds back into things.
The sound you can hear is Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes, who blasts around the outside of Carlos Sainz, who's sitting there at 80 kilometres an hour. Feels like walking pace in a Formula One car, and Sainz now rejoins the action, a full 5.5, 6 seconds back from the Mercedes.
So now I'm really confused as to why they've done that. If you're going to go long and try and wait, you really do have to go long. So half-baked with the strategy of Sainz by Ferrari.
Norris comes around Alex Albon. Another place is gained for Lando Norris, who's up into 8th position, and he's putting on a bit of a show today. Lando Norris pitted early, now he's making the places.
Something smells really burning in the car. Copy, Joe, we are checking.
That's the voice of Zhou Guanyu, who is suffering with burning smell in the car. It can be all of those electrical control boxes around the cockpit, can it not, JP?
It's never nice though, is it? When you get a bit toasty, smell a bit of burning, you know there's something going wrong. Zhou started in the top 10, and he's now dropped down to 15th position. The wheel guns are stirring, because in comes the race leader, Rosanna.
More work for the Ferrari mechanics. They're ready to receive the race leader. Charles Leclerc is in, the car goes up, the tyres go on, and it is the hard tyres as well for Charles Leclerc. Max Verstappen inheriting the lead, of course, that he lost when he pitted, and Charles Leclerc is out with a 2.4 stop time. Let's see where he now feeds back out into things.
So Leclerc's trying to cover off Hamilton. Hamilton is on the main straight and has been putting in the laps on the hard tyre. Leclerc gets up to racing speed and can move across to the left-hand side and take the racing line into turn one. So Hamilton has got himself ahead of Carlos Sainz. There is 6.5 seconds between the duo that were fighting over over third place, and Hamilton now in that position is a couple of seconds behind Leclerc.
So Hamilton's made it past Sainz and put himself in the hunt with Leclerc by a nice little bit of strategic work from Mercedes. You're hearing Kevin Magnussen, who's having a bit of a moment onto the pit straight there and having to stay wide of the curb, kicking up the dust and the dirt and getting close to the DRS board on the exit of turn 14.
Nervy time for Magnussen. It's high speed coming out of the final corner. Should be flat out, but Magnussen got a little bit wide and got onto the marbles, and off he went onto the access road, kept it pinned in typical Kevin Magnussen style and came back on. But bit of a hairy moment at high speed. So Verstappen leads from Leclerc, Hamilton third, Sainz fourth, Ricciardo still fifth, Piastri sixth ahead of Russell. They've been together all race long, still separated by a second and a half.
It's a long way to go in this race. I think I can make it on this time. Every chance, Lewis.
Okay, so you were very confused about the Sainz strategy, Alex Brundle. That is what Sainz and Ferrari are hoping, that Hamilton cannot make it to the end on that tyre by pitting early.
That's the jeopardy, but they've had, in general, better tyre management than Ferrari, to about the tune of the difference that we've seen in terms of the amount of time that they've stopped. I think Mercedes are not going to put Hamilton in the position to two-stop. Well, they've definitely lost that little battle if they have to two-stop, because Ferrari can definitely make it
there's
to
a
the
big
end.
crash. There's a big crash. Kevin Magnussen has crashed his Haas in the middle sector, and he was moments ago firing it off outside of the final corner. He's jumped out of the car, and this will be a safety car in the Mexican Grand Prix. The safety car has been deployed on lap 33. Magnussen is out of the car at turn 8, but that is smashed into many pieces. It's a big one, and you can tell the Dane is feeling the effects of that, Alex.
Yeah, he's gone and sat on the outside wall, clearly not feeling his best at all, K-Mag, and it's a really big impact. The barrier heavily deformed, all of the rear suspension disconnected from the Haas. The front right suspension also caved into the side of the bodywork, and the quicker they can get a marshal to Kevin Magnussen, the better, because he has jumped out of the car, the adrenaline surge helping him, but he's not feeling the best at the moment. In comes a Red Bull.
When it's your season, it's your season. Leclerc pitted the previous lap. Had he waited, he would have had the actual lead of the race, because he could have pitted and emerged still right ahead of Max Verstappen. But Verstappen now pits, and he can now emerge ahead of Charles Leclerc. It's a good stop from the Red Bull crew, 2.4 seconds. Where is Leclerc? He's coming down the main straight now. This might be pretty tight as the Dutchman accelerates up to racing speed, but he has emerged in the race lead. So perfect safety car timing for Verstappen. It's not worked out for Leclerc, and there is now a fire in the back of Magnussen's car.
Yeah, draining fluids and fire onto the rear suspension. Marshall's still not there with Kevin Magnussen's car, which is sitting in the outside wall there. So the quicker they can get a team, and now they've managed to extinguish the fire on the left rear. Let's take a listen into it then. Magnussen heads down towards turn 7. He's going to turn in. No issue so far through the mid-corner of turn 8. He's had a failure.
Something broke
in the mid-corner of turn 8. Something in the rear suspension has broken on the quite aggressive outside curb of turn 8, hasn't it?
The rear left suspension buckled as he tried to turn it into the right-hander. It's one of the fastest corners on the circuit, and actually Magnussen did nothing wrong from the cockpit, and he's greeted by a wall just about 20 metres away on the left-hand side. It's a big impact, and that one just, as a driver, catches you by complete surprise.
I do wonder if that was a slow burn failure, and that's why we saw him wide onto the main straight as well, or indeed if the issue on the main straight has then weakened something which has been finished off by the load transfer of that curb in turn 8. It is a very nasty undulation, the curb. Good to see K-Mag out, good to see the marshals with him, and we are under safety car on lap 34, and it is a red flag, JP.
Yeah, the race is stopped on lap 34. Kevin Magnussen has had a big impact. The rear left of his Haas car buckled, the suspension buckled, gave away and pitched him into the wall. The Dane is now put into the back of the medical car, and he will go for checks, but thankfully it looks like he's okay. But this Mexican Grand Prix is going to be paused for the moment. I imagine that's a barrier repair that's going to need to take place on a fast section of circuit, and it did take a while for the marshals to get down there and extinguish the Haas car as well. The Haas is now no longer on fire, but we are having a stoppage in the Mexican Grand Prix. It's been a busy day of sport on 5 Live. In the Premier League earlier, Manchester City won 3-0 away at Manchester United. In the early game of the day, Everton defeated West Ham 1-0 at London Stadium, while Villa beat Luton 3-1. Liverpool defeated Forest 3-0, and Brighton drew 1-1 with Fulham. Right now, though, you're listening to live coverage of the Mexico City Grand Prix, but it's just under red flag, so we're going to have a little hiatus in this one as well.
Options under the red flag, strategically very interesting for the teams. Two options I will highlight. Firstly, changing wheels and tyres, so you can throw whatever tyres you like on the car when you continue after red flag conditions. Second point, which is specific to this event and quite interesting, changes to the ducts around the radiators are allowed under red flag conditions. So drivers that you've seen struggling with temperature, if they've got an option to open those radiator ducts more, and they're probably about as open as they can get them, I would have thought, for this event, but if they do have an option for more cooling, they are allowed to apply that now.
So the cars all come back in, they can be worked on, as you mentioned, and we're going to be probably 10, 15, maybe longer
they
minutes.
They can also fix Leclerc's front wing.
That could be important.
Hey, that's a joke. Red flag for what? I saw the car was a bit on fire, but it's already all cleared.
Various noise on the radios, as you can imagine, Max.
So Verstappen had this race relatively in his pocket, as we are basically at the halfway stage, lap 35 of 71, and now it's open again because the strategy is fairly negated. I don't think anyone will have to pit, so we're going to have a long sprint race in effect to the end. There will probably be a standing start, although it's up to the discretion of the race director, and that puts a bit of jeopardy in this one. It's not an easy start, as we've seen already with the first getaway.
Inference of noise on the radio there as a subtle indication towards the competitors of Max Verstappen calling for a red flag because they want to negate the tyre advantage that he'd just taken under the safety car.
But we're getting a shot of the barriers down at turn 8 as Magnussen's car is winched off the circuit, still smouldering from that fire on the rear left, and there is a big hole in the Tech Pro, the barrier that Magnussen hit on the left-hand side of the circuit, and that is a slam dunk reason to red flag a race. So there's no conspiracy in this one. That Tech Pro is a safe barrier. It's designed with so many aspects of Formula One to improve the safety. Down the years, we have seen that come on leaps and bounds, but when the barrier is damaged, you have to replace it, because that is a high-speed section of track, as Kevin Magnussen, I'm sure, well knows. And we're under red flag. It's a good chance to bring in the expert opinion of the BBC's chief F1 writer, Andrew Benson. Andrew, what are you making of it so far?
Well, it was a bit of a swing then, wasn't it? For 1 minute it looked like all the jeopardy had been taken out of the race altogether when Verstappen took advantage of the initial safety car to come in for his second stop, because if that hadn't happened, that safety car, if he was forced to do a two-stop, then we were looking at a second part of the race with him chasing down Leclerc. Probably would have got him, let's not beat about the bush, but nevertheless, at least he would have been doing it. Then the safety car comes out and he's able to change his tyres, and then that suddenly looks like race in his pocket. Now we've got a red flag, and as you were saying earlier, what happens now? I don't think the teams have got a lot of choice on tyre wear, so I think it's all down to that jeopardy of the start. Can Leclerc return the favour on Verstappen after the first lap earlier? And just on that incident on the first lap, by the way, I thought that was a slam dunk Perez at fault from the outside, just turning in too soon. I don't know where he expected Charles Leclerc to go, and I think if they're investigating Leclerc for driving dangerously, I don't understand why on earth they're not investigating Perez for causing a collision at the first corner.
I think, Andrew, they're investigating Leclerc for carrying on without the end plate on the front wing. We're getting
I understand. I'm just trying to relate the two incidents. One's a front wing that's a bit damaged and then it falls off. The other one is one guy turning in on another and causing damage to two cars.
It's pretty much the same as the Qatar incident. Do you see it like that, Andrew, with Hamilton and Russell a few weeks ago?
Yeah, it's not as high speed a corner, is it? But very similar. A guy on the outside just misjudges his turn in, doesn't realise that there's two cars on his... Well, I don't know why he didn't realise there were two cars on his inside, because he'd just overtaken them to get there, hadn't he? But he should have known that Verstappen was there. Leclerc had nowhere to go. And, there was going to be a collision if Perez decided to turn there, and lo and behold, there was.
Yeah, Sergio Perez, the other driver out of this race, along with Kevin Magnussen, whose crash has caused the red flag. Hamilton took the blame for that crash with his teammate in Qatar. Initially thought it was his teammate that had just nudged him round into a spin. Eventually took the blame, accepted the fault, went to apologise to Russell, and the Mercedes teammates got over that. Hamilton was out of the race in a similar vein to Perez being out of the race here. And yeah, I think the Mexican driver can blame himself. He's already been out chatting to the media. We've seen images of some of the Mexican crowd crying. Here's Bottas' radio.
Car crashed in front of me. It's going to be a safety car.
Copy. Understood. That was Magnussen.
These guys got fresher tyres than me. Might be in trouble. I'm still on the straight.
No, I think the tyre offset isn't enough.
Magnussen okay?
Yeah, he's out the car.
That's Hamilton's radio. Here's Norris.
And Lando, do you think the hard will restart?
I'm going to have to say yes, aren't I? I can't say anything else. So.
Lando Norris radio. So everyone's going to have to go on a hard tyre from here, aren't they? So they're all in the same boat. So I think Norris has pretty much appreciated that straight away. What's the point in saying no? It's not going to go.
Ken, do you think you can do the only strategy available? No, guys, I'm really sorry. I don't think I can make it. Okay, we'll have another think about it then. Yeah, Lando saying. But it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Because we saw Hamilton have to get that tyre up and running out of the pit. It did take a sector or so. There's going to be a lot of scrabbling going on down towards that first corner, if it is indeed a rolling start. When you look at it, drivers, of course, need to use both compounds, so everyone who's run on the medium will have to run on the hard.
Yeah, Norris started on the soft, tried to go punchy in the early stage, then pitted early for a set of hards. He has got a new set of mediums left, so that could be the lure for McLaren to try and take some early gains, but we did see the medium tyre going away a little bit at the end of the stint. Halfway through, Leclerc had just pitted, so he took his mediums quite far. The other driver doing very well, Andrew, is Daniel Ricciardo, up in 5th place, has made his pit stop, looking hunky-dory in the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, he's well on for AlphaTauri's best result of the season, isn't he? I heard an interesting remark earlier today, though, Jolien. A very senior engineer, I'm not going to name names, was saying that he said he was wondering when AlphaTauri were going to realise how good their car was. The point that he was making was that there have been flashes of pace from that car all the way through the season, but the team and the drivers between them have just completely failed to capitalise on what he thinks is the potential performance in it. And he was suggesting basically that what Daniel Ricciardo's done this weekend is just access that performance that was always there in the AlphaTauri. He also said, by the way, that they track the upgrades across all the teams through the season, and the AlphaTauri is the most upgraded car for the entire field this year so far.
What above McLaren, who went from the back of the field to solid podium contenders?
Yeah.
Well, you could argue that AlphaTauri have done that this weekend, true. To be fair. Sorry, Andrew.
No, just in terms of the number of upgrades, I think he meant, not necessarily effectiveness, although we are seeing they have had a lot of upgrades in recent races, and they do seem to be very effective this weekend, don't they?
They are flying this weekend in the hands of Daniel Ricciardo. Yuki Tsunoda now is up into 8th place as well, so he pitted very early, and like Norris, took a huge gain out of that. So Tsunoda now is on an even keel with everyone under this red flag, and out of nowhere, we've got 2 AlphaTauris in the points, looking like they can score big. The team that is still at the back of the constructors' standings, millions of dollars will be paid out, the difference between 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th in the constructors. At the moment, Williams are there ahead of Alfa Romeo, Haas and AlphaTauri, but there's only 6 points separating the bottom 3 places, and Daniel Ricciardo is driving the car in last place in the constructors. If he can finish 5th, this would be huge. They've had enough drivers come through that team as well, haven't they, this year? 4 of them, with Nick De Vries being ousted before halfway, and Liam Lawson coming in as a second super sub.
Rosanna Tennant with the tyre screen ablaze across the commentary box, pointing out that Yuki Tsunoda has an extra set of hard tyres to use, new ones as well, sitting just inside the top 10, which could be very handy through to the end of this Grand Prix, couldn't it?
Yeah, and he's been making moves on that hard tyre, so if he can light it up in the same way in this last part of the race, maybe he could make a move on a couple of cars. I'm not sure. We're talking about how much the AlphaTauri has improved this year, or how good the car is, but could it go up against a Mercedes and a McLaren in the form of George Russell's Mercedes and Oscar Piastri's? Not sure.
They've been battling away behind Ricciardo, and I think he'll consider this red flag a bit of a shame, to be honest, because he's hanging in there up front, or he was hanging in there up front, sort of slowly sinking backwards from the leading quartet of pedalers. But he will now be under pressure, no doubt, from a charging McLaren of Oscar Piastri.
The race will restart in 10 minutes' time, so stay with us on 5 Live. We're going to have the second half of the Mexican Grand Prix coming up in 10 minutes. Max Verstappen will lead off the start. He will start on pole position. We think it's going to be a standing start again, so there could be more drama on the long run down to the first corner. Verstappen now just putting on his balaclava, doing up his suit, getting his head back in the game. How were you when you had a red flag in races? Were you the guy that stayed in the zone, sat in the car, or take a moment to chill out?
No, totally stayed in the zone. I like to stay in the race, which is tough when you have a very, very long red flag, but I really did like to stay in the race, plan out my next moves, and then I'm that guy who plans his restarts on the warm-up lap as well.
Were you a visualiser?
I'm a visualiser, definitely.
How did they go?
Definitely a visualiser. All the plans went really well. It's just the restarts that were terrible.
I never understood the visualising thing, I have to say. We hear of great athletes that do this, and great for them, each to their own. But with a race start, you're strapped in, and from Saturday or wherever you're starting, even right now, the drivers will know which order they're in, so they can visualise where they're starting. But as soon as the lights go out and you move inches away, you can't predict where everyone else is going to go.
I planned it, and I used to make places. I would make places with my plans.
Oh yeah,
places.
I could go places with my plans.
What about you, Jolyon?
Did you just didn't think about it until the lights went out?
I'm a winger, guys. I'm a wing it sort of person. No, you can't predict it, can you? So before a race start, here's what I'd do. You and this is what most of the drivers will do. They'll have a load of old starts, historic data of where the crashes usually happen. Do they happen on the inside with it bunching up, or do they skittle out to the outside? So I'll have seen like the last 5 starts at a track, and then from that you can make a rough plan of, I think I want to stay away from the outside because you often will get shuffled into the wall, as Sergio Perez has done here. It's not the first time that we've had an incident in the top 3. Valtteri Bottas, for example, a couple of years ago was turned around in the Mercedes as well. So the outside is risky, but the reality of it is eyes are on stalks and you're just looking for a gap wherever you can find it.
You wouldn't look around you because I would always look around me on the grid and try and decide who I thought was going to get away well and who I thought was going to brake quite late.
Oh, you're racing the man.
Oh, I'm racing the man. Yeah. You don't play the cards, mate. You play the man across from you.
Do you know what? I often feel quite silly asking the drivers on the drivers' parade how they're thinking the start may play out. For those reasons that you have cited, it's a bit of a silly question, but it's nice to get inside the mind and the headspace of a driver a few minutes before lights out.
Yeah, bear in mind a lot of our starts in sports car racing are rolling. And so it's kind of just, you can
visualise a rolling start.
It's a standing start,
cruise,
but faster, isn't it really? But it is, you always get a feel for who's going to get away well and then who's under pressure, even by the attitude of the way that the car looks as it goes across the line. I don't know, you just get a sense for these things.
I like the rule now of standing restarts for red flags. It was a safety car restart in the days of old of when I was driving in 2016 and 2017, and it was a little bit more comfortable if you were in a good position. If you're Max Verstappen at the front of the field, safety car restart, it's like an easy rolling start, isn't it? You control the pace, you can determine when to put the hammer down, and you're in charge. A standing start increases the jeopardy. Here's Valtteri Bottas.
Will be a standing start. Race resumption will be a standing start.
Goody. More action for us. We've got 36 laps left when this start will go. It will be 35 once they go out and round to the grid. The drivers all getting ready and getting in the cars.
Do we think Lewis Hamilton's going to try and do what Max Verstappen did off the first start, then go straight through the middle from third? Can he do that?
I think he will if he can, because it seemed to work out
back.
It seemed to work out quite well for Max Verstappen. I always thought this mid-race standing start is quite a difficult thing to do, because you're obviously gearing everything up for an amount of grip on your grid slot, clutch release, everything else at the start of the race. And so you're working away at trying to get the best start with a condition you're not expecting.
And also, your car is much lighter at this stage. That's what you're kind of getting at. So totally
well, your grid box has changed as well. Your grid box has had a half a race of cars driving over it or not driving over it. The tyre is totally different. You wouldn't tend to ever necessarily practice starting on a hard tyre because you do it so infrequently. So the whole thing is a little bit weird.
Well, weird and wonderful is what we are after for the second part of the Mexico City Grand Prix. The drivers are getting back into the cars now, ready for the restart, which will come at 13 minutes past the hour. Before that happens, though, let's check in with the latest BBC News. Here's Dan Maudsley.
Opening lap and lose where they lost the start.
Well, Charles Leclerc was on pole for the first standing start and then got himself right in the middle of two Red Bulls. Now goes into this race on the front row with Verstappen and Hamilton up against him.
Yeah, and it's Lewis Hamilton in that lovely third place that seems to get the slipstream down to the first corner. But you know, they've all got this far. They'll be super nervous of having contact down there. But it's like a half-hearted
standing start with hard is going to be a huge mess.
Now he's gone into a standing start with a hard tyre on before Silverstone, I think it was, wasn't it? And lost out quite badly with it.
Yeah, you've still got 46 degrees track temperature out there, so they should be yielding a little bit of grip. We know it's a low grip surface. We know they've got less downforce than normal because of the altitude, but I think he's saying it'll be a skating rink when we get down there at 200 miles an hour plus. So very nervy out there. A lot of drivers nervy on the radio, like, right, we're going to have to do all this on on some used hard compound tyres, but they've only got half the amount of fuel when they get there now.
Yeah, true. Birdie, to you.
Yeah, the standing start and this condition is very, very interesting. The teams put a lot of effort into what the correct clutch position is for the drivers. You see them in the car checking their clutch drops. They do it throughout the weekend. They check it at the end of each session, continuously doing that. Like Martin said, the car is now lighter, so already that clutch position is wrong. They're also doing a hard tyre, so again the clutch position is wrong for that. So a lot of what the drivers have been practicing to get the perfect start from the box is now not correct.
And I tell you what else has changed since the first standing start is the dirty side of the track is now a lot dirtier. You mentioned it, Martin. There's a huge amount of marbles have come off.
Yeah, they'll be wanting to get over nearer to the left-hand side if they get a chance. But also, there appears to be enough grip down the inside, isn't there? But, you know, remember Max took the lead going steaming around the outside a few years back. But let's see, the Ferrari's almost bogged down. They were trying so hard not to put any engine power in to get away on the first start, and they won't really have chance to practice anything. They'll trundle round and go to the grid, and that's it. So they've got to get a clutch bite point, as Bernie was saying, and understand how much grip there is.
I'm rather looking forward to this restart. I used to hate safety car restarts where Bert Mylander would pull away and off they go and there'd be no changes of position. These standing starts are so much better, but it is massive risk and reward, isn't it?
It is, as I said, for the first start, this start always leaves me feeling a little bit nervous.
Oh, we've got some bottles of water in the commentary box here, and I'm feeling like a Formula One racing driver. It's been sat by the window, and what was a nice ice-cold drink at the start of this race has now turned into something.
F1 on 5 Live.
Welcome back to your coverage of the Mexico City Grand Prix, where we are under red flag conditions. A huge crash for Kevin Magnussen in the Haas has meant all the cars have returned to the pit lane. We've been under the red flag for about 10 or 15 minutes or so, and we have been told that it will be a standing start to get things going. As things stand, Max Verstappen is leading the race ahead of Charles Leclerc, who started the race on pole position. Behind him is the Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, and Carlos Sainz P4 in the second Ferrari, and it's Daniel Ricciardo P5 in the AlphaTauri. The cars are now firing up in the pit lane. You're joining me, Rosanna Tennant, alongside former Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer, European sports car champion Alex Brundle, and the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson. This has really put a cat amongst the pigeons. Some people not sure, Max Verstappen included, that this should have been a red flag, but Jolyon, so important to make sure all that debris and, crucially, the barriers were restored and repaired so that we can go racing again.
It had to be a red flag. It's as simple simple as that. It's a pause in the race, but the barriers needed mending. It was a really big accident for Magnussen. The suspension buckled as he turned it into the right-hander of turn 8, and he headed straight to the wall. He got out gingerly, and thankfully seems okay. But yeah, we had to have this pause, and we're into now what should be a no pit stops run to the flag.
Yes, because it's been a tricky one to read, the strategy this race, hasn't it, Alex Brundle? Knowing who to come in, who's coming in when, and with what tyre. We're hearing that Lando Norris is going to start on new mediums.
Yeah, critically, under a red flag, we should make clear drivers get free choice of tyre again to begin what will be a standing start after the red flag by the latest specification of F1 rules. The hard and the medium, the clear 2 race tyres, and I'm seeing a mixture of that hard and the medium, depending on what the drivers have got left in their allocation, as much as everything, and what they think would be their best option moving into the final phase of the race would be.
The cars have now been released onto the track, so they will make their way round and onto the start, where they started the race just an hour and 10 minutes ago, and it will resume. They will have to follow the safety car, but they are being told they can pass it as well, Jolyon.
Yeah, so here we go then. Effectively a formation lap once again. Max Verstappen is at the head of the field. Charles Leclerc, the pole sitter earlier on, will start in second place. Then it's Lewis Hamilton, started 6th earlier on. He's in 3rd, and it looks to me like he's on a set of medium tyres. So Mercedes have gone really punchy with the strategy for Hamilton. Behind him, Carlos Sainz is 4th, Daniel Ricciardo 5th, Oscar Piastri 6th ahead of George Russell, Yuki Tsunoda 8th. Then Nico Hülkenberg and Lando Norris complete the top 10. The rest of the runners are Gasly, Albon, Zhou, Ocon, Sargent, Bottas, Stroll and Alonso. The 2 Aston Martins having a miserable time are at the back of the field. Alex, there's a big split of drivers on the hard and medium tyre, in fact.
So that's 36 laps then they've got to try and achieve on a set of medium tyres to get them through to the end of the Grand Prix. That is going to be an ask, considering we saw, if I'm correct, I think I'm correct in saying absolutely every member of the field relinquished the medium tyres, which most of the field started on before that distance earlier on. What's there to help them? The reduction in the fuel load will give the tyre an easier time through to the end of the Grand Prix.
Tyre update. Hamilton on scrub medium, Piastri, Russell also scrub medium.
That's Gianpiero Lambiase on the radio to Max Verstappen, who comes out of the final corner now and will line up in pole position. The rest of the field is really, really strung out on this formation lap. Fernando Alonso is only just starting the middle sector, so there's going to be another long wait. And it's kind of short-term gain versus potential long-term pain. Hamilton's going to be one to watch from 3rd on the grid. Piastri and Russell from 6th and 7th are also on the mediums. Hülkenberg in the Haas is on the mediums. That's a big play for a car that struggled to look after his tyres. And then we've got Lando Norris, Rosanna, on a new set of mediums.
Yeah, and coming into the race, as I say, over an hour ago, we were told by Pirelli, the tyre manufacturers, that the medium would last around 27 to 34 laps. So this is going to be really, really crucial that they've got it right. As Alex Brundle says, though, the reduced fuel loads could make things easier, but one to watch, definitely. The medium runners have got their work cut out to manage the tyres to the checkered flag.
Yeah, they're stopping much earlier than that, though. I mean, the earliest stops we saw were around lap 17 off that medium tyre. The hard tyre runners being left hanging at the front of the field here. We can see a lot of gamesmanship going on. Those on the softer tyre compound, it will heat up faster, it will give grip at a colder temperature and more quickly. They're leaving those hard tyre runners to cool their tyres at the front of the grid. Leading away will be Max Verstappen, then Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton on the set. Behind that, Carlos Sainz in 4th position.
Charles Leclerc did 31 laps at the start of the race on a set of mediums. No one has made it to 35 laps yet. That'll be the aim of Lewis Hamilton, who starts in 3rd. On the front row now is Max Verstappen on pole, with Charles Leclerc in 2nd. The 2 Aston Martins lining up at the back have formed into place. The lights illuminate now, and the Mexico Grand Prix will get back underway now, and it's a good start from Max Verstappen, who drops the hammer, and he'll come across immediately to cover off Charles Leclerc. Hamilton tucks in behind Leclerc, but it's a better start for Carlos Sainz, who's forced almost onto the grass by Hamilton as he tries to go around the Brit. Verstappen leads and moves to the outside, the inside, and he covers off the lead into the first corner. Leclerc sweeps into 2nd place, and Hamilton stays in 3rd. Sainz 4th, and George Russell is up into 5th, so it's a good start from Russell, who's come around Daniel Ricciardo, who clatters over the curb on the outside of turn 3 and has ceded position. So Russell, big gain from him, up 2 places. Verstappen on the brakes into turn 4, controlled the start, a great start, still leads. Leclerc second, Hamilton third. They're duking it out further back. Lando Norris has lost a heap of places, Alex.
And it's Yuki Tsunoda who's having a look around the outside of the Mercedes, but is now under pressure from Pierre Gasly behind. Max Verstappen has made the breakaway. Charles Leclerc shaped to the outside. It really didn't work out for him, though. Down towards the first corner, Lewis Hamilton in close pursuit of the Ferrari.
So Hamilton has not taken the most gain of the medium tyres. The best advantage would have been off the line. There was a long wait for the front row duo on their hards, but Hamilton did not make the best getaway. He's still in third position. He managed to hold off Carlos Sainz, and Sainz was forced quite well to the outside of the track down towards the first corner, but he's still there in fourth. So it's Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Sainz, Russell, your top 5, Ricciardo, Piastri, Tsunoda, Albon and Hulkenberg are your top 10, and Hamilton is looking very menacing as they exit the final corner and extend now down the long straight towards the first big braking zone at turn 1. He's getting closer to Leclerc. He has a little hover in the mirrors at the Ferrari, but with no DRS, he's not close enough to make the move just yet.
Now's the moment. This is the chance, though, for Lewis Hamilton, the peak of that medium tyre. He needs to make the most of it. Lack of DRS, making his life difficult. He'll have to wait yet a further lap before he's able to use that system to try and make the pass. And Lewis Hamilton having to pull out of the slipstream of the Ferrari, already down to turn 4. We saw him in the first part of this race having to do that to manage the engine temperature.
This is Hamilton's time if he wants to make the use of the medium tyres. Their best chance was off the line. He hasn't made the most of that, but he's still right on the back of the Ferrari, and Hamilton is putting Leclerc under big pressure. Replay of the start.
Yeah, it certainly is. And Charles Leclerc got a slow getaway. Max Verstappen had complete control of the road. Lewis Hamilton mid-road behind, but it was Carlos Sainz pushed off the racetrack almost by the Mercedes, and they went one by one down into turn 1. Daniel Ricciardo under a little bit of pressure in his AlphaTauri in the midfield. We're listening in to a replay of Lando Norris, who is in the mid-pack on his set of mediums in the McLaren and is getting swamped and squeezed in the mid-pack.
He had Alex Albon on his inside, he had Pierre Gasly on his outside, and they were so close to contact with 3 wide in the mid-pack, and Norris in the end was very, very cautious as he hit the brakes for the first corner, and he lost 4 places even on those medium tyres. So after a first stint of trying to gain all the places from his poor qualifying yesterday, Norris has lost it all at the second start. Lap 38 of 71. Verstappen leads. He's 1.9 seconds clear of Charles Leclerc, who has a front wing now back intact, but Leclerc's under pressure from Hamilton as DRS is enabled.
They're allowed to replace that front wing under red flag conditions, so Charles Leclerc will be gaining back those pounds of downforce, which we heard over the radio that he was losing in the first part of the race. That will be helping him massively, but it's not helping him enough. 0.3 of a second, the gap between the Mercedes and the Ferrari. If he can hold him off for 10 to 12 laps, the crossover should come for Leclerc, and Hamilton's medium should start to fall away.
Verstappen coaxing it out front in the Red Bull. He's been untroubled on this restart. He had a great getaway from pole position, covered the inside, and then had the pick of the braking spots for the first corner. Leclerc had his mirrors full of Hamilton, but held on to second place. Hamilton is third, ahead of Sainz, Russell, Ricciardo, Piastri, Tsunoda, Albon and Hulkenberg, the last of the point scorers at the moment. Outside, it's Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, Norris in 14th, ahead of Stroll, Zhou, Alonso and Sargent. Here's a chance for Lewis Hamilton. He's half a second away from Charles Leclerc out of the final corner, and now he can open the DRS and launch a full-scale attack for second place in this Grand Prix. Verstappen leads, Leclerc covers his mirrors, covers the inside, and Hamilton will have to wait just to hover a little faint to the inside for Lewis Hamilton, but it's not enough as Russell does battle with Carlos Sainz behind as well, but cannot make it through. Piastri having to fight with Yuki Tsunoda and hold on. Hamilton has another chance up towards turn 4. He's tucked into the slipstream of the Ferrari driver, but once again not quite close enough to make the lunge.
Ferrari's so good on a straight line, aren't they? This is something that Mercedes have spoken about during recent race weekends, that the Ferraris have the advantage on the straights, but it's the corners where Mercedes can find a little bit of extra something. This is what Lewis Hamilton's going to need, but he needs to be so careful not to use this medium up too quickly.
Weaving in the straight.
We see it.
Lots of accusation of weaving in the straight. Charles Leclerc covered Lewis Hamilton all the way to the inside line as well, and they were both under pressure down towards turn 1 as they faded in unison. Ferrari, Mercedes to the inside apex of T1.
That was Russell fighting with Carlos Sainz down to turn 1 on the last lap. This is the sound of the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton tucked still in behind Charles Leclerc. Just behind that there's another Ferrari with George Russell, who's not happy with Sainz's defensive moves on the last lap. We caught the end of it and they were side by side, and they might have another go this time. Hamilton's really, really close to Leclerc this time, and this time he goes right to the inside, even brushes the grass, but he's through past Leclerc. A brilliant run for Lewis Hamilton, but can Leclerc fight back? Hamilton's deep into the first corner, over the curbs at turns 2 and 3, and there's another long straight. Leclerc slides out of turn 3. There's the run now up towards turn 4, but Hamilton keeps the DRS and he keeps the position. Lewis Hamilton up into second place. Not a lot Leclerc could do about that one.
Back-to-back DRS, of course, from one detection zone at the end of the lap, so Lewis Hamilton consolidates the position with DRS down towards turn 4. Had to kick up the dirt on the inside down towards turn 1, but used all the lovely, fresh mechanical grip of that medium tyre to turn the front of the Mercedes in through the first apex curb and hold the line through the second.
There was not a lot of space for him on the inside. Leclerc defended the middle of the road and kept inching towards the inside, but Hamilton just kept his foot in, brushed up the grass, and then had a really tight approach into the first corner. Couldn't quite slow the car down to make the apex, but had that DRS to fight back up to turn 4. So Hamilton now into second place. He's on the medium tyres. He's looking quick in today's Grand Prix, like he did in last week's Grand Prix in Austin, and it's the same top two. Verstappen now out front, Hamilton second, 3.2 seconds though the gap, and Hamilton, remember, on the medium tyres. Verstappen untroubled in this Grand Prix so far on the hards. We've got another move for George Russell, who's closing and closing on the other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz down towards turn 1. Russell looks to the inside, but nothing doing this time.
We're seeing double, apart from the fact that Mercedes didn't manage to make it up the inside of the Ferrari as they headed down towards turn 1. Last tour around for Lewis Hamilton, including a big DRS event down the front straight, it must be said. 21.8, 21.6 for Max Verstappen out front. That's the kind of pace differential between that Red Bull and the Mercedes in the battle for the lead.
30 laps to go in this punctuated Mexico Grand Prix. It's a beautiful day in Mexico City. It's 27 degrees, barely a cloud in the sky, and Max Verstappen leads 3.5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, who's got up to second place now. And can he mount a challenge to the Dutchman, who has won so much this year already? He's won 15 out of 18 of the Grand Prix. He's won the championship. His team have won the championship. But has he got a challenge left to face in this Grand Prix? Lando Norris has made a move once again in this one down the inside of Valtteri Bottas, but he's undoing he's just doing the work that he undid at the last restart. Norris now up into 13th.
Textbook stuff down the inside of Bottas, and he seems to have been battling away in that late pack throughout this whole Grand Prix. Lando Norris just can't seem to find the track position.
Just keep at it.
Lewis Hamilton, the man, 39 points off second in the World Drivers' Championship. His teammate looks again to the inside. George Russell looking again to the inside of Carlos Sainz, and again is denied down to the first apex.
Russell not quite close enough to make a lunge. He's so close, but Sainz knows that he's not close enough and doesn't yet have to cover the inside. Daniel Ricciardo is coming with them as well. Ricciardo having a splendid weekend in the AlphaTauri, still running in 6th place. Piastri is 7th, and he's being shadowed by the other AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda had momentarily got ahead of Piastri. Piastri is back through in the McLaren, and they're running 7th and 8th. It's looking like a good day for the Minnows so far. Ricciardo 6th, Tsunoda 8th. The Williams of Albon is 9th. Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas in 10th position. We're not expecting any more pit stops to the end of this race. And this is the sound of the AlphaTauri. Daniel Ricciardo, the Australian from Perth, staring at his best result for a long, long time.
That's a long way on this tyre.
Got every opportunity here, mate.
But there's a long way to go. That's the team radio of Lewis Hamilton. He sounds a little bit jittery, Alex.
It's a long way for everyone. Hamilton, of course, on the medium, Verstappen on the hard, and he's just letting Bono know that he has a lot of work to do to try to keep that medium tyre underneath him. Both Ferraris that are sitting behind him are on the hard tyre, so he needs a bit of a gap now, Hamilton. A bit of a buffer to give himself something, some help if the Ferraris come charging late on. George Russell shakes to the inside again. This time it looked more like temperature management to me than a genuine go at Carlos Sainz.
Still not close enough, Russell to the back of Sainz. The battle for 4th place is on, but Sainz doing enough to hold Russell back at this stage. There's another close fight. Piastri now having to defend from Yuki Tsunoda. in towards turn 1. Big plumes of brake dust came off the front brakes of the AlphaTauri as he smashed the left pedal to slow the car down from 230 miles per hour down to about 60 through the first apex. Tsunoda started at the back of this Grand Prix, now up into 8th. AlphaTauri having a very good day. Here's Charles Leclerc.
And we need to increase lift-off because of tow.
These temperature issues affecting everyone. That's Leclerc being told to also watch out for temperature management.
Increase lift-off because of the tow. For me, that has all the hallmarks of fuel. Using more revs at the top because you're gaining the tow and then therefore having to lift more and coast to save a bit of fuel in the Ferrari even.
Could be, but with safety cars and red
they
flags,
should be all right. They should be long all right, shouldn't they?
They should be fine. It could well be temperature management.
It's because of the tow, which is confusing me, but it could well be the temperature management because of the hot air of the car ahead.
Exactly, the dirty air then increasing the temperature. Leclerc's not been following too many cars so far in this one. Verstappen was marching away in the first part of the race, then he pitted early. Leclerc inherited the lead, pitted just before the red flag, which gave the advantage back to Max Verstappen, who was waltzing away from the rest of them once more on lap 44 of 71. Verstappen leads now by 4.5 seconds. I think Hamilton's challenge now is to keep second place from Charles Leclerc, who's still just 2.5 seconds back in his radio.
We believe that in about 5 laps, hard will be faster than the medium.
Well, we said short-term gain versus long-term pain. Hamilton's taken the gain from 3rd position up into 2nd, but that is the radio to Charles Leclerc saying soon enough you'll have a chance to fight back.
Crossover point coming quickly. Just to recap, we've had 2 race starts. That's because the Haas driver Kevin Magnussen crashed out. We're hearing from the team that he's being kept in the medical centre for a bit longer, just as a standard observation, and they think that the incident was caused due to suspension failure, possibly heat-induced. So Kevin Magnussen, the second retiree. The first was the home hero Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, crashing out at the first turn. He has disappointed the Mexican fans, as you might expect, but perhaps cheered on the Mercedes fans and the Lewis Hamilton fans in particular. As it stands, Lewis Hamilton has now narrowed the gap in the drivers' standings between himself and Sergio Perez to just 21 points. No wonder he is going to want to hang on to that P2 spot this afternoon.
The dulcet tones of Rosanna Tennant there, alongside me, Jolyon Palmer, and Alex Brundle in the commentary box. And we've got the beady eye of BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson with us, as well as Lando Norris picks up another place, this time on Pierre Gasly. Andrew, are you surprised at the choice of medium tyres for Hamilton?
I'm not actually, no. I mean, Charles Leclerc did 31 laps on the medium tyre at the start of the race, and that was with starting with a full tank of fuel. So basically Hamilton's got very much a similar distance to do, but with half the weight of fuel in the car. So in theory, the 35 laps that was this remaining race distance shouldn't be a problem for him. The only question, I think, is how badly the medium goes off compared to the hard on Leclerc's car. But we can hear that Leclerc's already being told to be careful with lifting and coasting, making sure he does more of that at the end of the straight to keep the temperature under control. And that's when he's 3.5 seconds behind Hamilton. So if he closes up, you would think that the temperature issue is only going to get worse on the Ferrari. So I think on balance, it's looking pretty. It should be looking pretty okay for Hamilton to stay in second place.
That was the factor, though, wasn't it? At the start of the race, Andrew, both Ferraris with a healthy crossover loss to the new hard, I should say, when Hamilton came out of the pits. It's a case it can definitely do the distance. Whether it's performant over that distance, we'll find out through this second stint.
Lando Norris in the McLaren. He's going to make another move down the inside into turn 1. It's on Esteban Ocon, but he's getting very close to the back of Hülkenberg as well. Very, very tight as Norris went deep on the brakes, but he's made it past the Frenchman in the Alpine. Norris, the Brit, in the McLaren, now up into 11th. He's had a really busy afternoon in the midfield today. The driver that's getting regularly used to podiums in Formula 1 now in the McLaren. But today is damage limitation for the team and the driver. That was another one for Norris down the inside. Passing Ocon, that's 11th place, and he's now staring at the back of a point, which he'll have to take off Nico Hülkenberg.
Lando Norris, lovely move down the inside. They got so close to the sole remaining Haas of Nico Hülkenberg as they entered turn 1. So deep on the brakes was Lando in the Papaya McLaren. They really challenged each other down towards the apex of turn 1. But Lando getting his car alongside, and a decent amount of flailing bodywork there off the rear of Esteban Ocon's car. It looked like a rear wing stay to me, had released on Esteban Ocon's car there.
It looked like just a bit of tape, clear tape that was dangling off the back of the car. We had the same with Yuki Tsunoda earlier on. Ocon was trying to fight back against Norris there. Here comes Russell to the inside. Sainz has to cover him this time. It's a late move to the middle of the road, and Sainz covers Russell into the first corner, but now he might be vulnerable into turn 4. It's another move from Lando Norris, who comes past Nico Hülkenberg this time. It's a little bit more straightforward for the Brit, up into 10th. Here is the sound of the Mercedes. In 5th place is George Russell, who got Carlos Sainz to defend for the first time in this Grand Prix against Russell, but he didn't manage to make the move up to turn 4. So wasted opportunity for Russell. It was a late defence there, wasn't it, from Sainz? We've already heard the radio from Russell earlier on saying Carlos is weaving a bit on the straight. A little bit of a late one for you?
Yeah, Russell's still moving out of the airflow of the car ahead. So despite the red flag...
Moving and a braking by Sainz.
Yeah, A-firm, see that again.
He's still not happy with it, is he? That was on the limit, but okay for me. I don't have an issue with that.
Russell, he's dobbing him in, isn't he, today? He's pushing for the stewards to intervene in this battle for 4th place as they come through the stadium section in front of 65,000 fans at the Forosol Baseball Stadium here in Mexico City. Sainz jumps on the throttle once again coming out of the final corner. He's got good traction out of there, though. He's got good straight line speed. He has an immediate little glide towards the inside of the road and back on this straight. That's what Russell's talking about weaving on this straight, but Sainz is not completely under threat just yet. Now here comes Russell, closer into the braking zone, closer again. He's sniffing the back end of the Ferrari, but he's not able to make it through on the brakes. Sainz is doing enough, and he should hang on for another lap as Piastri gets luridly sideways, defending from Yuki Tsunoda once more. This is the battle for 7th place. Ricciardo is escaping ahead. Tsunoda opens the DRS, and he fights again with Oscar Piastri, who looks left in his mirrors, right in his mirrors, and he'll find the Japanese driver here. Braking late on the outside at turn 4, trying to get the switch back through 5, but Piastri defending well on the medium tyres. They're falling away a little bit, but he's hanging on ahead of Yuki Tsunoda for now. Fernando Alonso is going to be the 3rd retirement of the race, and his miserable weekend is put to a close. The driver in 4th in the standings may well cede that position at the end of this one. A replay of Tsunoda.
I think there was contact between Tsunoda and Piastri as Piastri closed the apex of turn 2. They're absolutely side by side through the apex of 1, and I think they actually make contact. Left rear of Oscar Piastri to right front, yes they do, of Yuki Tsunoda's car. I doubt there'll be any damage for either of them, but a little bit of a slew sideways for Piastri. Gave him space on the inside, to be fair.
Yep, that was just a bit of wheel-to-wheel there. Front right against the left rear, the AlphaTauri on the McLaren. Russell still looking at the back of Carlos Sainz in the battle for 4th. He jinks to the inside, but it's another feint more than a move from George Russell. Here comes Tsunoda once again on Oscar Piastri, and he's really deep around the outside, and there's contact and a spin for the Japanese driver. The AlphaTauri is pointing the wrong way, and after a brilliant drive for 49 laps, he is punching the air, Yuki Tsunoda, because he's been turned around by Oscar Piastri. There was contact on the last lap. This time it's bigger, and Piastri continues in 7th place. Tsunoda is falling right the way down the order. He's down in 16th now, and tough moment there.
I don't think I'm not going to put that at Piastri's door at all. I think Tsunoda didn't have any right to be heading round the outside of turn 1. We saw that with Perez earlier on in the Grand Prix. Piastri defended the inside and made his movements very clear. Tsunoda tried to take the apex for turn 2 and is already arcing into the corner in the braking zone. I think you got to take the blame for that if you're Tsunoda.
Short and sweet on the radio, but he was so deep on the brakes.
Chopped across.
And that was Oscar Piastri's point of view on the team radio there. Both short and to the point, but I think I sympathise with Piastri like you do there. Tsunoda was late on the brakes, but just started to turn in, cramped the space for Piastri, and probably can blame himself for that one. Tsunoda rejoins in 16th place, but all of the hard work for his first 50 laps of this one have come undone. The order then on lap 50 is Verstappen now 8 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton and seemingly cruising to another win. Hamilton 2nd, Leclerc 3rd, Sainz 4th, just ahead of George Russell, Ricciardo 6th, Piastri now 7th, ahead of Lando Norris, his teammate. Then it's Albon and Hulkenberg in the final point scoring position. Outside of that, it's Ocon and Gasly, the two Alpines, followed by Bottas, Stroll, Sargent, Tsunoda and Zhou, the 17th of 17 runners. Alonso's just retired the car. Kevin Magnussen had a big crash at the halfway point, which brought out the red flag, and Sergio Perez was out after contact at the first corner, fighting for the lead of the race on home soil. Rosanna.
Yeah, we are now seeing that incident causing a collision between Yuki Tsunoda and Oscar Piastri has been noted by the race stewards. It popped up almost at the same time as the off, so I'm not sure whether that was the first bump that we saw, the tyres being bumped together of the two cars, the AlphaTauri and the McLaren, or whether that was the spin that pushed Yuki Tsunoda off. But we will wait to see what the outcome of that is. Interestingly, listening into the Haas radio of Nico Hulkenberg, he is saying what's going on at the rear grip really going off. He's on that medium tyre, so is this where we're going to see the medium runners start to struggle, or is it something more sinister, something more like what we saw with Kevin Magnussen?
I was going to say, he's also a driver who's seen his teammate go into the wall extremely hard, and that can play mind games with a driver when they're bouncing over the curves through the middle sector. Could just be a bit of tyre degradation, could be something at the rear of the house, but can also be a driver just feeling the rear more than he normally would.
Well, it's a car that usually suffers from high degradation. I was surprised that he was on the medium tyres to get to the end of this one. Magnussen did suffer a suspension failure, which can be disconcerting when you're sitting in supposedly exactly the same specification of car, so maybe that's playing on his mind, but I would have thought at this point, with 20 laps to go, he's more worried about trying to steal a point from this Grand Prix, which would be big for Haas's championship hopes. Neither Alfa Romeo in the points. That is the team just ahead of Haas now in the constructor standings after they scored well in the last Grand Prix. And Nico Hulkenberg has got a line of cars coming up behind him. Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, followed by Bottas and Stroll, all in a DRS train, trying to hunt down the German in 10th position.
I'm not going to stake my house on points for the Haas at this stage, I don't think. With both Alpines less than a second behind Valtteri Bottas queuing, and even Lance Stroll queuing behind that, he's going to have a lot of work to do to keep the dueling Alpines behind him.
He kept Gasly behind in the first stint pretty nicely, but it is a long way to go for Hulkenberg in this one to keep not only Ocon, but then Gasly or Bottas or Stroll, any of them sniffing around for this final point. Ocon opens the DRS down towards the first corner and will try and make the move. Behind that, Bottas is going to make a move on Pierre Gasly. And the best thing for Hulkenberg is that these Alpines are slow in a straight line, and Bottas is proving that. Coming down the inside of Gasly, Gasly fights back around the outside of turn one. They're wheel to wheel all the way through the first sequence of corners, and Bottas will have another go as they both open the DRS up to turn 4. The Alfa Romeo starts roaring alongside the Alpine, but he'll have to go the long way round. This is the sound of Pierre Gasly in 12th place, and he's defending hard from the Finn just behind him. Bottas slides the rear of his Alfa Romeo. He cannot come through, and this is what's giving Hulkenberg a chance. Those Alpines they're really slow in a straight line.
That being said, the Haas has routinely been throughout this weekend the fastest car in a straight line down towards that end of straight speed trap, so they are able to defend their position perhaps as a result of that.
And we heard earlier on the radio Alex Albon talking about how fast in a straight line the Alfa Romeos were, so that's why Valtteri Bottas can mount a charge on the Alpines. He just can't seem to get it done through the corners and the braking zones.
Must be so frustrating for Ocon at the moment, being in a much quicker car that's stuck behind a car that's just really strong on the straights. They come through turn 16 and squeeze on the throttle pedal once again, coming round the final corner, flat out at 17. Ocon opens the DRS and will have another run. He's just not able to make the inroads at the crucial part.
It's like when you bring your Renault Clio to a track day, isn't it? And you get stuck behind a bit of a slower driver in a DB9 who takes off down the straight, and you can't hang on to him through the corners.
You're speaking to a former Renault driver here. Oh, I know the pain. Here's Tsunoda.
You're faster than the cars in front.
I don't need any more information. I don't need anything.
So race engineer, they're trying to G up Yuki Tsunoda there, who had the contact, fell from 8th position down to 16th, and he's saying, I don't want to hear it, 18 laps to go, he'll do what he can.
Yeah. The moment where he ended up backwards in the first part of the lap, really at his door, and a bit of a clumsy moment, it must be said, for Tsunoda. Who is looking, and perhaps under a little bit of pressure from the performance of Daniel Ricciardo, still sitting in 6th in a car that had turned one lap in the top 4 of a Grand Prix before they came here this weekend. Daniel Ricciardo routinely in the early stage of this Grand Prix running up in the top 3 even, and still clinging on a set of hard tyres as we move into the stage of the Grand Prix where the hard tyre is going to come towards drivers.
You can say to Haas that I'm gonna go for it, so you better be ready.
Put a stamp on it and send it then, Esteban Ocon. Here he comes with the DRS open. He's told everyone what's going to happen. Is he going to lunge it in? He's closing on the Haas ahead. He's closing. He moves to the inside, but he doesn't have the position to make it through. He tries around the outside, but he's slewing wide and runs out of road. Ocon is getting impatient here, and he's telling everyone about it.
I love the concept of them just popping their head round the garage and going, just to let you know, our driver won't be braking this time, down towards turn 1. So let your guy know whatever you think would be best.
Yeah, tough mitigation when you're going up to the stewards for causing an incident. Well, we told them I was going to do it.
I told them I was going to send it down to turn 1.
There's scripted moves, and then there's that from Esteban Ocon. It's a frustrating time for him in the car that doesn't have the straight line speed, and he's wondering how on earth he's going to score a point today. Verstappen leads on lap 55. He's now over 10 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Surprised he's not being caught more by Charles Leclerc, but there's more than 5 seconds between Hamilton and Leclerc at the moment. Then it's Sainz, Russell, Ricciardo there in 6th, Piastri in 7th ahead of Lando Norris, Alex Albon, and then it's the big fight with Nico Hülkenberg in 10th, hanging on for the final point. Ferrari, they're just around the pace today, having locked out the front row yesterday. This race pace on the hard tyre, which should be coming into its own about now. They're making no inroads at all.
Very, very average. Extra medium from Ferrari in terms of speed. Hamilton, I think, is doing a bit of a tyre maestro job, though, with that set of mediums at this stage. Still got quite a long way, still got 16 laps to do on them, and he's going to be suffering by the end of the Grand Prix. Leclerc 5.2 seconds back from Hamilton. Sainz in touching distance, isn't he, if Hamilton really fell off the cliff. They were talking about thermal degradation here, no, the overheating of the surface of the tyre. So if Hamilton can keep the surface of those mediums under control, the amount of extension of the stint that's available, we're hearing from the teams, is an incredible amount. So that's what he's going to aim to do.
And with Verstappen walking away with this one, 11 seconds clear now. Hamilton at least has got nice clear air in front with which to defend from those Ferraris. No dirty air, no overheating issues. It's a fairly straightforward job for him. 15 laps to keep a 5-second gap to the cars behind with tyres that are going to be going away. And remember, this is a battle still for second in the Constructors' Championship. Here's Piastri.
Oscar, if this is our pace, we would let Lando pass to go and attack Ricciardo. We would need to find half a second.
Piastri getting the hurry up then. He's got Norris now within a second of him. This is the 2 McLaren drivers in 7th and 8th. Daniel Ricciardo in 6th is just 3 seconds up the road, and McLaren reckon that Norris has got a better chance to get him. And this is the sound of the Brit, who has a little look to the inside of his teammate, but Piastri doesn't jump out of the way there. He has a big lock-up though, and he's struggling in this stint through turns 2 and 3. Norris clambering over the curves, really clouting them, and now Piastri moves to the right-hand side. Is this the moment McLaren swap their cars? Yes, it is. After Piastri's big lock-up, not doing himself any favours to get to the end on his medium tyres. Norris takes another place. He's up into 7th, Rosanna.
And interestingly enough, Lando Norris, as we hear him on the radio,
Thank you.
thanking his teammate Oscar Piastri. We've heard Lando Norris, haven't we, in recent races, asking to be switched with his rookie teammate Oscar Piastri. Next up on the road, though, is Daniel Ricciardo, and I've just heard Daniel Ricciardo ask his race engineer for radio silence unless it's important. So I can imagine the focus needs to be laser sharp right now for Daniel Ricciardo, holding back his former teammate at McLaren.
Sure. So Norris on the charge, trying to get onto the tail of Daniel Ricciardo. There might be a little bit of spice in that one as well. Ricciardo's probably got a point to prove, having been kind of ousted at McLaren just by Norris's sheer speed and dominance over him. They've now running line astern 6th and 7th, and Ricciardo's, he's going to want to keep this one, not only for the points, but for personal pride as well.
He'll want to keep it behind, definitely. Interesting between the two McLarens, though, how easily Piastri ceded that position there. I do wonder if he's ailing slightly after getting a whack from Tsunoda down towards turn 1 and knows he's not going to have quite the same pace as Norris through the rest of the Grand Prix.
These Formula 1 cars are strong though, aren't they? We've had numerous contacts this year where drivers have been able to shrug them off
I mean, shrug them off and continue, yes, but potentially lose a bit of downforce and be behind the game with your teammate. Big battle now between Sargent and Stroll. It's a big battle over a small place, 14th and 15th.
Maybe over-egging the battle for 14th there between Stroll and Sargent.
Watchword? Jeopardy was the watchword.
Oh, yeah. Bring it on. Stroll keeps 14th ahead of Logan Sargent as Christian Horner has an arm around Sergio Perez, trying to console the Mexican who retired on the opening lap. There was a big cheer when Perez came back into the garage and greeted, said thank you to all his mechanics there for their hard work.
What is this guy doing?
Yeah, copy that, Logan. We're on it.
See, matters to him.
And Alex, it matters to all of us, the battle for 14th. Who are we kidding?
And Logan Sargent actually has been told on the radio just prior to that particular message that he's doing a good job. They're happy with his pace, but they could adjust the brake balance just a little bit if he wanted to, if it mattered as much.
Nice to have a bit of coaching to the rookie still, who got a first point last time out in Austin. But Sergio Perez, who's still around at the circuit, still getting cheers. Here's Sargent again.
That's too much moving on the brakes.
So that's more insight into why he was frustrated the last time around. He's going to have another chance at passing Stroll this time around. Let's not forget, Perez is still in a fight with Hamilton for second in the Drivers' Championship. It's the big fight that's still on this year, and Hamilton has got a chance to take a big 18 points off him.
Yeah, it will be 18 points, and that's a big problem for Perez because it really moves him in touching distance. The cheer you can hear is the crowd cheering Perez, who's gone up to the pit wall to give them a wave after not taking too much part in the Grand Prix action. But he's trying to give the fans what they came for. We're getting another look back at Lance Stroll and Logan Sargent. It was Stroll looking down the outside. Sargent had a look back in the mid-corner of turn 2, but it was, in the end, Stroll who managed to come out ahead.
Yeah, into turn 1, Sargent was on the outside there, and Stroll was inching across, almost forcing the American off the road, and that'll be the source of Logan Sargent's frustration. But they're still running in 14th to 15th place. Lando Norris is closing in on Daniel Ricciardo now. The battle for 6th. Ricciardo on the hard tyres. Norris on the mediums. He's 1.3 seconds back. So that's the next fight that is poised to happen. Russell in 5th was for a dozen laps on the tail of Carlos Sainz, pressuring the Spaniard. But he's dropped away now, 4 seconds back, and starting to struggle on his medium tyres. He's got Ricciardo 2 seconds behind him. Norris a further second back, and Norris senses another place and another couple of points in this one with 12 laps to go.
Russell was glacial on that set of mediums. He's losing a lot of time to the leading cars ahead, and especially losing a lot of time to his teammates. Second a lap bled from Lewis Hamilton, so he's really starting to struggle.
He's a second a lap slower than Lando Norris as well, who is flying on the medium tyre. You wonder what Norris could have done today had he not been struggling so much in qualifying. Yes, they didn't put a time on the board, had to start from 18th. He's been overtaking from the word go, but it's all going to come to probably the outside reaches of maybe a 5th position for Lando Norris. Coming through now the middle sector, through turn 11, he's got Ricciardo in his sights. He's had really great speed once again today.
Driving it beautifully, isn't he? Lando Norris, really, the attitude of the car looks so aggressive, the right attitude over all the curves, leaning it up against the outside curve in the McLaren to just bring the slide to a close through the exit and get the car moving forward. And he's absolutely hunting down old teammate Daniel Ricciardo. We're listening in with a rear vantage over the rear wing of Daniel Ricciardo, and Norris is closing though in a straight line. Could this be the moment where he takes the position?
It's going to be a lunge from here. Ricciardo covers the inside. He thinks it might come. He'll know his former teammate pretty well, and he covers him off through the first corner, but that's compromised his exit. This is the sound on board the McLaren now as he gets pretty aggressively on the throttle. He'll get the DRS, and Ricciardo is white lining it down towards turn 4. Another harsh defence. Norris looks to the outside, and they're so close, a paper's width between the two of them, but Lando Norris has the outside of 4. It gives him the inside for turn 5, and that's another beautiful move from Lando Norris. He needed all of that aggression because Ricciardo did not make it easy, but there is a ripple of applause in the McLaren garage. Another place made up. Norris is up to 6th.
And McLaren were right to switch their drivers. Oscar Piastri now with measurable damage. That's what the team are telling us. So that is why they switched the drivers, and it's come good for them as Lando Norris has made that pass on Daniel Ricciardo.
And a gorgeous pass it was. Down the outside of turn 4, rolls it around the outside of the apex and then snatches away the apex of turn 5. Ricciardo sees him slightly too late, jinks right, and then realises a man of his experience is going to have to give the position up.
That was so close to being our second bit of contact between a McLaren and an AlphaTauri today. The other two almost touching as Norris swept around the outside. Full aggression from both, but respect as well at the same time. And Norris now is up to 6th. He's got 3.5 seconds to George Russell ahead. And at this rate of pace, he could well catch the Mercedes for a top 5 by the end of it. Ricciardo now settling into 7th, with Piastri 8th, Albon 9th. Nico Hülkenberg is still 10th. So is it a game of bluff from Esteban Ocon? Where's the big send? He's still running in 11th. He's got the DRS open down to turn 1, but he's not going to be close enough this time either.
Just keep on telling them over the radio as he falls away in terms of pace, perhaps, that he's going to go for it. Esteban Ocon not fast enough and not close enough this time round either. A 10th back from Nico Hülkenberg on that tour of the circuit. Surely they're going to get it. He's really struggling for pace.
The threat of a lunge gets ever scarier as Ocon drops further away. He's half a second back into turn 4. He's a little bit closer this time, but so far the boy who cried wolf has found no wolf. Ocon in 11th, Hülkenberg in 10th, clinging on to that final point that would be so important, as it would be for Albon in the Williams in 9th position. AlphaTauri have been dealt a pretty big blow with Yuki Tsunoda dropping out of the points. Daniel Ricciardo losing a couple of points as well. They were poised to jump from 10th in the Constructors' Championship up into 8th position. They would still do that. They'd be tied with Alfa Romeo were it to end like this. So those minor places in this top 10, important for the championship. At the front of this race, Verstappen leads by 12.5 seconds. He's cruising and has been pretty much since he took the lead, moments from the lights going out at the original start of this race. It's been a nice drive from Max Verstappen, who's had no further trouble. Hamilton is second, 6 seconds clear of Charles Leclerc, who's 4 seconds clear of Carlos Sainz, who's 5 seconds clear of George Russell. It's pretty static in the top 5. The interest is coming a little bit further back. Lando Norris is catching George Russell. He was half a second quicker on the last lap.
Yeah, Verstappen is still in the race, we promise. He's just 12 seconds clear in the lead, so we haven't heard much of him. It's Oscar Piastri now, despite that damage, catching Daniel Ricciardo. The battle you can hear is Esteban Ocon, still trying to make his way past Nico Hülkenberg with potentially more success.
Is this going to be the send? Hülkenberg's looking in the mirrors. Ocon's approaching as they come up to turn 4, but it's not quite the moment. He's getting Hülkenberg offline, though, and is he going to have a look into turn 6? That'll be a crash if you have a chance there, and Ocon knows it. He backs out. But Hülkenberg is struggling so badly in the Haas. Ocon's almost looking into the inside of turn 7, but you can't pass there. The cars flash through the higher speed corners now. It's 1 by 1 again, past the area where Hülkenberg's teammate had the crash that brought out the red flag about 30 laps ago now, and he is under considerable pressure. Oh, the heart rate will be going now.
Riverbeds with more traction than Hülkenberg has at this stage of the race, and both Alpines know it. He's really struggling. Almost managed to unsettle him offline through the middle sector and out-drag him on the short shoots between the various corners. This is the area, oddly enough, the main overtaking area where Hülkenberg is strongest. If he can resist the DRS with all the straight line speed of that Haas, he's doing an Albon in a Williams right now that we've seen all year and managing to hold them off down to T1.
Yeah, Albon trademarked the slow car with a high top speed and cling on for dear life for a point or two. Albon is doing that ahead, but with Hülkenberg as a blocker, he's stopping anyone else approach him. And Hülkenberg is once again just staying out of arm's reach of Esteban Ocon. We're on lap 63 of 71. Verstappen comes across the line. He's nearly a lap clear of the battle for 10th position now. He comes through and we make it lap 64 of 71. And in just 29 laps, he's almost lapped the guys in the points. That's the difference in pace between the champion having a serene drive out front and Hülkenberg in the thick of the action in what is probably the race's slowest car.
Just enjoy that typical Max has hired this track shot for this stage of the Grand Prix. And he is so far out in the lead. You cannot see a car as he enters the front straight and powers down it until he's already arced the car into the first corner again. An absolute hammering. 13 seconds to the good now.
What do you reckon he's thinking about? What would you be thinking about in this position? Here's Norris.
We know what Russell is like. He's all or nothing. So we just have patience with him.
It was that was like something out of a racing movie, wasn't it? Like the last lines. It was a very last-ditch attempt for Lando Norris over the radio. What's Verstappen thinking about? I bet he's watching the race on the big screens. That's what, whenever I was lucky enough to be in the position, it did happen, where I led races by a margin.
Where you hired a track to the
Where I hired a track. I watched the non-existent rest of the race on the big screens.
Yeah, there are big screens dotted around the circuit. I remember doing the same in Abu Dhabi 2016. I was having a very lonely drive. I was not at the front of the race. I was outside the points, in fact. But in the closing stages, it was the finale of the championship, and Hamilton was backing up Nico Rosberg into Max Verstappen, and I was closing out my season just watching the big screens on the straight, thinking, wow, this is some finale.
Shall I tell you what's depressing? When the guy that's won the race comes up to you afterwards, before he had any chance to watch it back, and goes, good move. How do you know? I saw you because I was leading by so much that I could watch it play out.
That was the Fernando Alonso special from earlier in the season, wasn't it? Was it the Miami Grand Prix when he was running up in the upper reaches? Alonso flying at that stage in the Grand Prix, finished on the podium in Miami, and in the closing stage just said, oh, what a move from Lance, having just looked up and seen his teammate putting on a move in the lower end of the top 10. He had the gall to do that. He does not anymore. He's out of the race, and Aston Martin's season has gone all awry at this stage.
Putting on a move now, coming careering back to the topic of the race, Lando Norris has managed to make his way up to the rear of George Russell's Mercedes, who continues to struggle for pace. He's managed to get a bit closer of late, only kind of losing 3 or 4 tenths, but he's still struggling mightily, and it does look like Norris has every chance of making it up into the top 5 in a flying McLaren.
This would be a huge result from Norris, to come from the back of the grid, having got himself up into the top 10 for the restart, lost a handful of places on that restart. He's had to do it again. He's nearly made 10 places now in the 30 laps under green flag conditions that we've had all on circuit. He's put on some lovely moves, the best of which has been on Daniel Ricciardo, who's dropping away pretty quickly from Lando Norris now. There's 4 seconds between those two, and there's less than 1 second between Russell in 5th and Norris in 6th. Lando Norris opens the DRS, his compatriot just ahead, but he's not going to be close enough, I don't think, on this long run down to the first corner, but he's closing. He puts the papaya nose of the McLaren into the mirrors of George Russell, jinks to the middle of the road, trying to distract his rival. Old rivals from the karting days, old rivals coming up through the ranks in Formula 2 as well, and now they're doing battle with 5 laps to go in the Mexican Grand Prix.
You got Brackley versus Woking in the cars, you got Kings Lynn versus West Country in the seats.
Sounds like an FA Cup tie we got on our hands. It's the Mexican Grand Prix, I promise.
Mexican Grand Prix county special, and Lando Norris making his way in. He's not made too much of an inroad that lap, 8 tenths the gap. Russell will put on a very good display of defending this position. These are extremely important points for Russell and Mercedes.
Is Russell an all or nothing guy? That was the radio message to Lando Norris. We've spoken about his contact with Hamilton already in Qatar a couple of races ago, but Hamilton took the blame for that. Russell's had a couple of incidents in the past, but I don't know if is he going to be too aggressive with his fight. We've got a sound you can hear is Nico Hülkenberg, who's had to put on a very, very big defence of Esteban Ocon. They're still running side by side on this lap, and Esteban Ocon has made it through at long, long last. Heartbreak for Hülkenberg, who would have just been craving that final point, but finally Ocon is through, and he's disappearing up the road. In fact, it's now Pierre Gasly side by side with Hülkenberg as Norris tries to attack George Russell into turn 1 on lap 67 of 71 in this Mexican Grand Prix. They come through turns 1, 2 and 3 and accelerate now on the long run to turn 4, and Norris will be with George Russell up into turn 4 again, where he passed Daniel Ricciardo. Here we go, looks to the outside. Russell's deep on the brakes. Norris cuts back to the left-hand side, and he'll have a little chance down to turn 6. He's up the inside of George Russell, and there's nothing that Russell can do to defend. We haven't seen a move there so far in this Grand Prix, but Norris has made another one. The crowd cheer in the second stadium section of this Hermanos Rodriguez circuit, and Norris has made another place up into 5th.
Squares off 5, gets the run down to the inside of 6, and he's got so much more traction than George Russell. It was a relatively easy steal in the end for Lando Norris, who moves himself up into 5th position. Further down the field, we've had a kerfuffle between Valtteri Bottas and goodness me, the move from behind, and that must have been from Lance Stroll, was it, who's gone round, and Fernando Alonso obviously retiring earlier on. Lance Stroll, who's gone round and has now found his way to the pit lane.
So they were all bundling into the very, very tight left-hander at turn 13 together, all bunched up behind Nico Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly having a fight. Stroll had a little nose to the inside at that tight left-hander, the slowest corner on the circuit. They were side by side into the next right, and then Stroll turned in. Bottas had a front wing in there, and the Aston Martin was tipped into a spin. That was all just outside of the top 10. Stroll has now come back into the pits and could well be the fourth retirement from this race.
Critically, though, that all triggered by Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly making the move past Nico Hülkenberg. So that has been shuffled out of the points.
So 4 laps remaining, 3 laps remaining now as Max Verstappen completes another one, extending his lead on a very comfortable day for the champion in the Red Bull. It's Verstappen ahead of Hamilton, ahead of Leclerc and Sainz. Norris now up into 5th place. Russell drifting back in 6th, and Ricciardo closing in the AlphaTauri. That could be the fight to watch in the closing stages. Then it's Piastri, Albon and Ocon now in the top 10. Outside, it's Gasly, Hülkenberg dropping back, Sargent, Tsunoda, Bottas and Zhou. There's 16 runners left in. Stroll looks like he's going to retire.
Max Verstappen with the fastest time of all at the moment, but Lewis Hamilton being told on the radio by his race engineer Peter Bonington that he can go for fastest lap, probably more towards the end of the race. They'll give him the engine modes and there'll be no temperature issues. So Lewis Hamilton keen to take another point this afternoon as well, of course trying to reel in Sergio Perez in the driver's standings.
It's going to rage and rage, isn't it? The battle for second. Looked like it might have been up when Hamilton was disqualified from second place last week. Lost 20 points in the swing from losing 18th, and Perez shuffling up into 4th position. But as soon as you have the next Grand Prix and Perez suddenly retiring, the gap can change around pretty quickly. And Sergio Perez's form is really fairly woeful at the moment in the Red Bull. He's struggling to pick up many points at all, having a lot of incidents, struggling in qualifying form as well. And Hamilton fancies that second place in the driver standings, which would be some result for the Mercedes this year.
Fastest lap of the race so far, 21.6, held by Max Verstappen, which is around a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton is going right now. So you've got to do that at least. There is nothing, though, to prevent Max Verstappen on his set of hard tyres finding an engine mode, finding a deployment mode and going for a fastest lap himself, which I'm sure he will.
So that'll come on the final lap then for Verstappen. He started the penultimate lap 70 of 71 right now. 1 to go after this, and Verstappen is cruising to another Grand Prix win. Not cruising is George Russell, who's got a bit of pressure now from Daniel Ricciardo. The AlphaTauri driver is tucked in within the DRS range. He's 8/10 back from Russell as they start their penultimate lap, and Ricciardo's going to fancy picking up a couple more crucial points for AlphaTauri. A reminder, they are currently last in the Constructors' Championship. Every point matters so much for these minnow teams, and Ricciardo is taking on the might of Mercedes in the closing stages here.
And he's just been told on the radio that they're going to leave him alone now, let him just get on with it as he gets closer to the checkered flag. Can he make the move on George Russell? I'm watching Toto Wolff looking on. This is critical for them to hang on to second in the Constructors' Championship as well. They're going to want to hold on to P6 for George Russell, but Daniel Ricciardo will have something to say about that. Half a second behind the English driver now, the Aussie is.
And with Ricciardo being on this form and poised to score big points, it's a double whammy for Haas as well, with Hülkenberg dropping out of the points. If Ricciardo can take either 7th or 6th in this Grand Prix, that will drop Haas to the bottom of the Constructors' standings for the year.
There was a stage in this race where we had the 3 bottom teams in the Constructors' Championship standings up in the points. Now Ricciardo being one of the only team to maintain that honour, and it's a huge point swing, isn't it, when you score points so infrequently as a team. Massive for Ricciardo, and what a massive result this has been for them. You've got to wonder what this means now, moving through it. We know he's been so strong here, Ricciardo, over the years. We know he loves this circuit. But if he keeps this form up, the absolute worst, disastrous performance for Perez. If Ricciardo keeps his form up, surely he will be behind the wheel of a Red Bull next year.
He's got 3 more races to try and keep this momentum, keep this form, and he's got a few more corners to try and take 6th position away from George Russell in this one. He's tucked in, coming up towards turn 4. He's going to have one more big shot as Max Verstappen enters the stadium section on the final lap of the Mexican Grand Prix. The Dutchman started 3rd. He scythed between the 2 Ferraris on the opening opening lap. There was a moment it looked like he might have to fight for it after he pitted early, but with the red flag, the timing of the safety car, it has all come towards the Dutchman, who comes through and takes a dominant win. His victory number 16 of 19 in 2023 for Max Verstappen, and in truth, it's been a walk in the park. He's going to win by 14 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who now exits the final corner and takes big points, even bigger points, with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix as well on the last lap. Hamilton takes 19 points and he closes the gap to Sergio Perez in the championship to just 20 with 3 races to go. Charles Leclerc, the pole sitter, comes through on a quiet day for Ferrari, and having had the joys of yesterday, it's third and the final place on the podium for Leclerc. This is the sound of Daniel Ricciardo, who's still looking at the back of George Russell. The Mercedes will finish in 6th place. Ricciardo comes through in 7th. It's been a great weekend for him as well, and still some good points for AlphaTauri. Piastri is through in 8th. Albon is going to be 9th, and Esteban Ocon, after a lot of huffing and puffing, has finally picked off Nico Hülkenberg, and he's going to be the last point scorer.
Max, another day, another win, and another record, mate. Well done.
Well, Max, that was a brilliant drive, and well use of the hard tyre in that second half there. Well done, mate.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was again a very strong race. So yeah, great job. I think yeah, we did the right thing. We're unlucky with that red flag, of course, but even after that, I think we're flying. So yeah, really good.
A thorough debrief from Max Verstappen then, the winner here today, and he acknowledges that maybe things went his way, but I don't think there was another way where he wouldn't have won this one today, Alex.
The man who's led over 800 laps this season so far, and you can see why. There was jeopardy in it momentarily, wasn't there, before he took off into the distance once again.
For about 200 metres, there was the jeopardy. But it was not lasting long for Max Verstappen, who has walked away with victory number 16 in 2023. He peels into the number 1 slot. He has won the Mexican Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton is second. Charles Leclerc completes the podium ahead of his teammate Carlos Sainz. Lando Norris with a recovery drive up into 5th, ahead of George Russell, Daniel Ricciardo, Oscar Piastri, Alex Albon and Esteban Ocon claiming the final point. Pierre Gasly was 11th, ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Nico Hülkenberg dropping to 13th, ahead of Bottas, Zhou and Sargent, the final of the 16 runners. Retiring from the race, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, tough day for Aston Martin. Kevin Magnussen with a big crash, but Magnussen is okay. And Sergio Perez, home hero, who didn't get through the first corner.
Disappointing day for the Mexican fans who have turned up in their thousands to cheer on Sergio Perez. It wasn't to be for the Mexican driver today. His teammate, however, will stand on the top step of the podium. The top 3 drivers have pulled into the incredible stadium section El Foro Sol, and Lewis Hamilton is getting out of the car as well. Points to the crowd, thanking them, I'm sure, for their support this weekend. He comes home P2 ahead of Charles Leclerc, who has just pulled up and is starting to get himself out of the Ferrari. So that brings us to the end of the Mexico City Grand Prix weekend. My thanks to the BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson, European sports car champion Alex Brundle, and our lead commentator and former Formula 1 driver Jolyon Palmer for talking us through this evening's race. We will be back with the 3rd race in this triple header in Interlagos, Sao Paulo, the Brazilian Grand Prix next weekend. It's a sprint weekend, so more points on offer, but we will also have all your analysis and reviews of the Mexico City Grand Prix coming very shortly on the Checkered Flag podcast. Do join us for that as well. Up next, it's Nick Erdley sitting in for Stephen Nolan, but first let's get your BBC News with Dan Munsley.